let's go ahead and call the meeting to order at 7:05 p.m. So roll call, Donna Kopecki present.
Tony Benedetti here.
Tiffany Hughes here.
Eric Fisher.
Lisa Craddock Thidoff, I am here.
And I had a revised agenda that didn't get printed, that the variance is listed first because I wasn't sure if the residents were actually going to be there. I'm guessing not.
I'd like to have these ahead of time. And I did not, it seems like one of them, they were on it and then for some reason my email are disappearing. So did the variance?
It was just very recent, because they submitted very, very recently, and Jason, it was just the other day, Jason stepped forth and did a report on them, as you can see.
Well, I'm saying a couple days early. I just like to go, I like to visually see the property I'm talking about.
So you don't, let's just put it this way, you do not have to act upon them tonight, okay?
Right.
They're in front of you because, from our standpoint, we're trying to get things in front of you quickly in regards to that, because our variance process is long, right, for residents. That's a big problem. So since these came before the meeting, Jason got busy, got them done, and then went ahead and got them out there, to everybody in time for the meeting.
So,
Now, if I may, so what might help here, instead of going through, I think the variance is a good example of jumping right to the thing with the fence ordinance in the new section. So that's what, this would fix ever needing to hear ordinance or variances again for corner lots. Because that's really what we need to do. And quite frankly, if this is a very small change, you can see it in front of you, you could act upon this tonight and send it up to council for Monday's meeting, and then they could get started and act on it within a 3 reading period, even if they wanted, and still beat out the variance time for these folks. So that would fix the problem.
so I'm still gonna ask, is it possible to get these ahead of time?
If he got it to you as fast as he could, because they submitted just the other day.
So it's coming from Jason?
In this case, this one came from Jason. He got it done to get to you as quickly as possible.
So basically, it's my understanding that these have to get to you 15 days before the actual hearing. The actual hearing goes to council. So it's my understanding that they have already done the request for 30 days. Correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is 30 days from the time they put in the application to they actually go to council. That's their waiting period, is the 30 days from the time it's received until it goes to council. It just has to be to you guys within 15 days of it going to council for your recommendation. So technically,
You could
these are
act
way
on it next
early
time.
for you guys.
Yeah.
But the hard part is, with you guys needing this date and this date,
Yeah.
and council only being at this date and this date. Now, could we easily just email these out as soon as we get them? Yeah. I don't see why Becky couldn't just email these out just so you could have them as far as that goes, because they're gonna come to you. But like this one was just received on July.
Yeah.
He just did this one July 28th.
Yeah, so
And with
this
the
is early.
permit, yeah.
So I guess that's what I
Just,
understand the process, but I guess I'm wondering more. Because if we're sitting here tonight and need to make a decision, I
You
haven't
do not
even.
need to make a decision tonight.
But we don't need to, but we want to.
You don't necessarily need to or want to. I mean, I'm just putting out there that you, because of what you stated, we have to advertise 30 days ahead of time for the public hearing.
Right.
Okay? You have this meeting and the next meeting before a 30-day period is up, right? I mean, the council meeting that this would go to would be minimally the first one in September, right? Okay?
So I guess another way to look at it, if this little work here would fix this,
You would.
then let's review that. And if we're in agreement on that, then we can approve them conditionally upon this language.
Yes,
And then we don't have to worry about any of it.
correct.
It would, because,
Council would take it up and it would, I would say to do 2 things. I would say, if you could get this, because this is so short and easy that we could do this, a review and a discussion in the next 20 minutes, if it takes that long. And if you commission so chooses, you can recommend up whatever change you want to council. We can get that in front of them in time for the work session, and then they can have it for first reading Monday. By the 3rd reading, it's still the first meeting in September, which would still be the first meeting for the variance. And what I would say is that by next meeting, you can review, just in case council doesn't grant them or approve this, you still want to give them a recommendation on the variance by the next meeting, right? That's what I would say, right? And that way you've covered all your bases, and then it's in council's court to go ahead, and they'll even have legislative committee to review this, you know, by the second reading, so this will work out nicely. And I think it's pretty straightforward and easy. Now, the question is, and that I base the numbers, since we're discussing it, on kind of the last few variances. The building lines are 26 feet from the edge of right of way, and what the commission has chosen to do, and council's followed along with the recommendation, is basically giving them up to half in all cases. So where it's 12 and a half feet, 13 foot, I just made it even 13 foot, so people, you know, you don't have to go to 13 foot, but that's splitting the building line, you know, distance to the right of way from the, you know, from the house. So that's an encroachment over that.
Is this like does this come out of our code? Is this?
Yeah, that is the development text approved for the planned residential district, which the MI subdivision sits within. So this would apply directly to the subdivision because of how those corner lots are designed.
And the red is just what we've added.
That is correct. Everything else is already.
Just added the red. if
Yeah,
you
that's
want to
just-
do it.
What I'm getting at, so there is like a code number for the planned residential district?
No, it doesn't work that way. So there's a code number, but by reference, this code is then adopted. The development text is adopted with each planned residential district zoning is how it works. So this is the approved development text for that district within the planned residential zoning criteria. And what you do with zoning is when you have a PRD, you adopt text separate of your actual ordinance, because it's not a straight district, is how that works. So this code is accepted code by the village for the planned residential district for that
But it's, oh
area.
man, I don't even want to get into it.
Yeah, I don't know what you're getting
So-
into. This is how it works.
Is this
Well, but
just,
it's not in the code.
Yeah,
Sarah.
so it's,
I understand that, but for this to take effect, because once,
so,
though,
Hold up,
the
this-
planned residential
just-
district text does not become part of our code.
It does.
Unless we adopt it.
you've already adopted it. It's in front of you. So this
Then
was
why
already.
hasn't it been codified into our ordinances?
I will ask you a very nice question, usually because we can, I'm sure, add it as an addendum. You know, I don't know how it gets added from a codification, that's not my specialty area. I don't know why it's not in there. I'm sure can add it to the website if nothing else. So that's a question for that's more of a technical discussion. But what's important here,
But you already know the answer to it.
this,
All right, go on, just move on.
is this,
typically, that's just how it's done.
is this specifically for MI?
Yeah, this is just specific to the planned residential district text.
So how do we work that with the old part of the village?
This does not apply to the old part of the village. We're not seeing these things from the old part of the village.
But we could.
We have in my 4 years
We
here.
just had a corner lot, we just did a variance for one, just in
Oh,
here.
yeah, in the planned residential district, absolutely.
No,
No.
we just
We've
did
done
one
four.
on, we
On
just did
Lakewood.
one,
Lakewood.
So,
yeah, whatever.
so right now, I would say you are seeing the majority of your variance requests from here. So what I'm suggesting is this will fix what we're seeing for every corner lot people were to put a fence up in planned residence district. If you want to then make a separate recommendation for the ordinance for the R3 district, you can do that as well. That's
See,
fine.
here's my, you know, and I don't, part of me doesn't want to get into this discussion right now, is that the planned residential text that this comes from.
Yes.
Okay, once we accept it, there's not going to, once we've accepted the development and all, our codes are the things that govern what happens.
That is your code, buddy. That's your code.
No, it isn't, because it's not in the code.
This is not a discussion for this
I know,
body.
that's what I
This
say.
is not a discussion for this body. Again, what are you doing?
What
This
I'm
gets
trying
old.
to
This
understand
gets
is
old.
what
You're
you
wasting my
said.
time. You're kidding me, right? I made a recommendation based on your code that you don't understand how it works, and yet you argue with me in front of the commission on
You
the
know what,
record for this stuff.
Barry?
Argue in front of the rest of your council members with Gene present, so
This
he
is the
may
first
explain
time
to
it
you.
came up, okay? So
You've got to
you
be
tell
kidding.
me, I'm tired of you telling us when we can talk about stuff, and
Talk
and
whatever
then
you
you
like.
say that I'm not, that you're right, I'm wrong, but we have to go to someone else to confirm that. You know, I'm just tired
You
of
don't
arguing
like
with
what I'm
her.
saying to you. You do not accept what I say as the
You're
professional
absolutely
here.
right,
So,
Barry.
so is there any point in time where the houses over in the line development will be just R3?
No,
Okay,
never.
okay.
That is a good question, and it never will happen. Until at such time that the village chooses to change that, but that's a whole different process. I don't think that's necessary. You accepted a planned residential district because you wanted a development text, a plan text outside of your code. That was a decision by council in 2016.
That isn't why we did that, Eric. That's completely.
And I think I remember being under the understanding that once the development was complete, they would
Once it's
be, like, they would
complete, then
be
they
part
can
of
go
our
under our-
park, because there would be no more plan.
It is not.
Our
no,
things would
it's
be their
not-
things.
You have to, no, the village has to change it. It does not magically become an R3. If it was coded as an R3, it would be zoned as an R3. You would have to go through and change it to an R3, but it doesn't meet any of the criteria of your R3, because the lots have been designed differently. It's a planned district. It's completely different than your R3 zoning.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, it's a planned district zoning.
What we have to do, just like it's not an R3, it's not going to fall under any district within our code.
It's a planned district.
It is a planned residential district, but what you're not understanding is if we want this text to apply to that area, then we have to create a planned residential district and put it in our code, just like the R3, the R4, and
It's not
then
correct.
that's how, well,
That's
listen,
not
you're,
correct.
I appreciate that's the way you feel it works.
It's not a feel issue, it's a legal issue. I'll let you
But you
explain
know
it
the
to you.
answer, but how do you
I've
know that I
already
don't?
told you. You're kidding me, right?
I would also point out that you continually said that decks and patios were under our code, but they weren't
They
ever
are.
in our code.
It was-
And you're-
there's a
but we're
legal
getting
document
ready
that says
to-
it is.
Getting ready to
Can
pass
we,
a
What
can we
we
stay
do-
on subject and not
Yeah.
go
No,
into
what we do-
everything, all that stuff? So
So-
I want to clarify.
Yes.
So some of our codes are for them. Some of the codes that work here are also for them, but
Correct.
some are not.
Correct.
So some are going to be separate. How do you,
So
how is
when
that differentiated?
When you have a planned district, all right, there are some things that you specify out of the district. So you have plating differences, right? You have coverage differences. You have all kinds of distinct differences in a planned district that you can do and allowed to do that are different than a straight zoning district, right? The idea is that it gives you more flexibility in a subdivision or commercial design, right? So there is the code that overlays the rest, but then you can change within the district certain things, right? So you may say, all right, our general fence code applies, but then when you look at the district code says no, as an example, no chain link, okay? So that applies. That's a stricter version and it applies, okay? And then within the district, you can obviously do setbacks, building line changes, things of this nature, which are different than what we call the rest of Minerva Park. And so that's how you do that. And it's done within the criteria of a planned district. It's just a legal framework of the zoning that allows it to exist, right? It allows it to, basically meet muster and meet legal muster and be able to continue as it is. So, and there's been plenty of settlement and case law and stuff through the years, and this is where we're at with it.
I'm gonna say something that, this is probably gonna show okay. I understand when it comes to streets and fences and all these different things over here. And then it does talk about signage, which is really just for the developer.
Yes.
So when you start talking about the zoning text, this is gonna be a random one.
It's no random.
When we start talking about signs, just in general, not because this has nothing to do with this. When we
Okay.
start talking about signs, okay? Because we have zoning, we have codes that we allow certain signs, we don't allow certain
Yes.
signs, we don't, whatever. It doesn't really say anything, I'm assuming, in our development text about signs.
No. Your sign code applies, right?
So I guess that's
Except
where
where
I'm
there are
confused.
changes.
So it's half of our codes, I think, is what you were saying. Half of them apply over there, some of
Yeah.
them don't apply over
So-
there. What applies over there doesn't apply over here. So how do we know which ones apply where? and-
So the code for Minerva Park as a whole applies, except with specific changes to the development text that are spoken here, okay?
Is it sort of like the ORC is over everything and
Yes.
then more specifically
That
Minerva
is-
code?
That is correct. You've got kind of a
Okay.
macro set of laws, and then
That's-
you kind of come down the funnel to a specific area,
So why not have it, either have us like them, that sounds very confusing.
So I
It's not
understand.
describing it right. This is why I'm so flippin' tired of, if you are not describing,
Really? Why am I not describing it right?
because the plan development text applied to that development
Yes.
while it was being built.
No, it applies all the time.
No, it does, not until we adopt these rules into our.
They've already been adopted.
Oh.
They've already been accepted by council by ordinance.
No,
I think.
Tony,
I'm
this
just-
is, this part of the conversation is for legal to tell you directly, and you won't believe him either, but that, I'll let him explain it, because that's his forte, and it's really not for a discussion here.
change.
This is a suggestion
We
of,
can change, so how do we go about changing it? And
Yes.
let's go along with your idea of how this is working.
That is
So
how it
how do we go about changing things in that district?
what I'm
We have
suggesting,
to,
so as an
you're saying
example,
we have to amend
the development
planned
text.
residential district? We can't do that.
You're amending the development text that's already been adopted for that. It's already been, and mind you, you voted on it once already. It has been changed and altered over the course several times since 2017, okay? And you voted on one of them, okay? We've already made changes to the fence code over there and stuff.
Right,
And
and
that is
that-
adopted code, and that is what is acceptable, and
And
that's what
that was
has to be
still
followed.
during the construction process. That's what you're not grasping.
Yeah, okay, I'm totally stupid. 20 years, master's degree, completely no idea what I'm talking about with planned districts. Yep, no idea.
I didn't call you stupid.
You did.
No, I didn't.
I'm
I
done
said
with the
you're-
insulting.
You're not describing this
Yeah,
correctly.
you're telling me every second, I don't know what I'm talking about, is what you continually say, and it is on the record.
Okay, so let's do this. I guess here's,
So,
maybe part of this is, I'm not in disagreement. I was always under the impression, so this is all news to me, because I'm not in disagreement. I was under the impression that we were all gonna be able to have the same fencing, the same, different things like that, what our codes are, what they are gonna do. So this is, I mean, I'm just.
so let's step back for a minute.
It's been described, and that's the
So
way it is.
the fence code in general applies, right? So you've got that layer of fence code. The
Right.
fence code, the height, right? The materials in general, except for chain link fence. And then we have some specific differences that are applicable within the planned residence district. For example, you can read there where we made a change not that long ago regarding our 8-foot high fence along the backside, right? And how people can, bring their fences down and then apply, and what they can do with it. They can't, they have to stay out of the easement. Those are all applicable to that planned district specific to those lots against our fence, and that's contained within this development text, all right? In the same sense, when you have corner lots over there, you make an adjustment to the development text. Now, if it pleases the commission, you can do this on a larger scale with your existing code. This exact same line, we can change the existing fencing code if it so pleases the commission. This is merely a suggestion because we have so many variances coming out of the new section. But if you feel you want it evenly applied across the board, there's nothing wrong with that. No one here is gonna argue against that. So instead of making a specific surgical change, you can just do the overall change, to the village code as a whole. And you can choose to adopt, again, you can choose to make that recommendation up to council. We can agree to the verbiage, which is gonna be very similar to this, and we can look it up real quick and make that happen. That's not difficult. This is merely a suggestion with all the ancillary discussion aside. Either way works. One way applies to the whole village. Now, keep in mind, there are some unique differences to how the subdivision here is platted versus this subdivision over here, right? In general, we have the vast majority of the lots over here are back-to-back corner lots, right? So I did not take a close look at the rest of the village to see what any relationship was, because there are differences. If the houses are back-to-back, it's one thing, right? If they're faced in a strange and odd way, then we get into some oddities with how that may look or affect the neighbor. And if it's straight code versus a variance, there's no review for it, we have to allow for it, right? And I can't necessarily anticipate how that may happen. So I can tell you how it works in general over here effectively, right? And you can see on the, what's submitted as to those exact examples within the, that are in front of you for the variance.
So I have two questions.
Yep.
Okay, fences can come to within 10 feet of the corner of the front of the house. Did that not used to be 14?
Correct. So I added this as a matter of course to also note that you do have some strange looking fence code over here because of the way that the village code and fences read in regards to the building line. The intent I'm sure was that it was supposed to come to the corner, right? We've seen plenty of examples. But the fact that it says building line leaves the code enforcement officer, anyone else that looks at the code, a little bit stuck, because you have to come to the building line, so that affects any lots that may be set back from the building line, in which they can come up a lot further on the house, right? Because I think the intent is not to bring the fence up to the front corner of the house, but in some cases, you can almost get there based on a 14-foot difference as the current code reads from the building line. If you stipulate that it's from the front corner of the structure, then you're going to be, you're going to define it the way I think the intent is, that the village wants it. But again, that's for discussion. You may not want
So
it.
this is actually potentially setting it further back from the front of the house instead of
Correct.
closer.
Correct. Correct.
No, it's coming to, it's now 10, it's 14 feet
Well,
now.
I'm making a suggestion, and again, you can change it to 14, you can change 10, you can change it to 5, it doesn't matter, that's why it's in the brackets, it's just a draft discussion, because the current code reads 14. I think the current code was meant, again, to come from the corner of the structure, but again, you do have, especially, in many cases, if you look at the old village, you have a straight line house, right? You've got a bi-level, you got a straight line front, right? So you've got two even corners, right, against the building line. In the new subdivision, more than not, you've got offsets, right? Yep, you've got a porch that might come over, and then perhaps the garage is set back, maybe it's forward a little bit. You've got offsets, and so there's differences in where that structure sits in relationship to the building line. So pushing it back 14 foot evenly is really gonna crimp on the one side if it's already pressed
Well,
back 3
It's
foot.
gonna become a greater, the whole 14 foot back from the front of the house, that was the intent.
Sure
you're
was.
going from the building line, but that regardless is, I don't know. See, on our court, all the people that have fences, they come out to the front of the house, to the front line of the house.
Yep.
Now, and it's read in the original development text of the village, it says that fences were allowed all around your house, but they could only be 3 feet from the front of your house to the street. So that was the original development text.
That was before they changed it.
Hold on, please.
That's before they changed it.
No, this is out of the original development text for the village of Minerva Park.
Okay.
Where it says that a fence is all the way around, except they have to be 3 feet from the front of the house to the street. See what, okay, and then the next thing it changed to is that you could only have a fence to the back of your house. That was where it was at one time, before, and then Scott Dollinger came up with 14 feet back from the front of your house. The thing that isn't getting, or hasn't been brought up is, why can't you have a 3 or 4 foot fence in the front of your house?
I don't know why not. It's
And
up to
this is
the
the whole
village.
topic that
Yeah.
hasn't ever been.
Right now, you're not allowed to put things in front of the building line, period, okay? So, because it's a structure, and it's very specific in the R3 amongst other districts that you can't put structures in front of the building line, okay? In the old section of Minerva Park, the building lines varies, but generally between 25 and 30 feet, right? These houses weren't always surveyed correctly, sometimes the houses themselves are over whatever building line is on the plat, and it happens. So, if you want to allow for that, that's a longer discussion, obviously, regarding fences and how you want to do the code and whatnot, right? And again, that's the community's decision in regards.
Well, and that's why I say getting into a conversation right now about fences.
Well-
If you, because here's the thing, because I've been talking about patio, I've been talking about so many things, and here we are, now, I'm going to start talking about fences.
So specifically, we want to be fairly surgical here. Tony, you're talking correctly, it could be a very much larger discussion, right? Here, we're saying, look, there's a continuous, if we want to talk about time-saving issues, this discussion is well-versed on a surgical approach to the issue of corner lots, okay? If you feel you want to adjust the code for fences as a whole, then you should do that for the whole village. This is simply a suggestion for the current development text, which would only apply to the newer development, but again,
We can do this and we can do the rest
yes, you can.
some other
Yes, you
time
can.
or today or.
Correct. This gets it back in front of council quickly. You can, and we can knock out the fences in front of the house thing. That's, you can scratch that line. That's merely there for a discussion. Leave the A corner lots with the definition and then
Okay.
what that would allow.
This was my other question.
Sure.
I feel like, so you're saying from the house, I'm wondering if we shouldn't say from the sidewalk, distance from the sidewalk.
Decide what?
You're saying distance from the house, 13 feet.
So that's over the building line.
Oh, okay. Over
Because
the
what we're
buil-
talking in corner lots is that we have 2 front yards. Even though the house sits with the front of the house technically to one front yard and the side of the house to the other front yard. It's 2 front yards and it's platted with 2 building lines.
Okay, so I guess what I'm saying is, if you look at, I know one of the variances was, yellowfinch and black sycamore.
Okay,
So I'm standing on, yellowfinch, the house on the left, we approved variance, took it however many feet from the sidewalk. If the house behind them wants a fence, I mean, are their building lines the same, so that if you put another fence in there, it will be the same distance from the sidewalk?
Yes, that's the idea. That's
Well, it's the idea, but is that
But
accurate?
If you.
Or are you gonna get it
adopt-
like,
if you-
oh, okay, this one comes to here and this one comes to here?
Are you talking about the back-to-back house scenario? which
Yeah.
is- Okay, so if I have the back-to-back house scenario, which of course we've seen in this case, we've got it to where the building line is set no matter what, okay? And so if you're saying you can encroach up to 13 foot, that's the max you can go.
Okay.
So then both houses have to, can match up to that, exactly, which usually they do, right? Because they want to get as much yard as they can fenced in. It's not to say someone may come out to 12, the other guy's,
Yeah.
13, that's possible, they might be shorter for some reason.
So can you say something like that, like you would want those to come, I think it would be weird to have one, I'm gonna say 12 feet from the sidewalk and one 14, if they back up.
I don't disagree that there could be, I think
We have to go through and look and see if the building lines are all the same.
they are all the same. The building lines in the new development are all the same, so that's just standards. The issue,
What I guess maybe I didn't say that right, that the houses are the same, that the building lines line up.
the
Yeah.
building lines the building lines go around the corner of the streets and they're exactly 26 foot from the edge of right of way, consistently.
But
You
it
can look
could
at the plat.
be that the next person doesn't necessarily want
So
to
what-
do that, so then can we
Understood. So what you're
control
getting
that?
into is the same thing people in other houses get into where I don't necessarily want to put the fence all the way to my property line, right?
Yeah.
And it looks a little different. Is that
And maybe it
necessarily a bad
doesn't
thing?
matter, but it seems like it would
Yeah.
look funky.
Well, the issue that you have is, we currently have 3 houses that have an issue right now. They do not back up to each other, there's gaps like this between them, and there's currently gaps like this in between them. They've already been cited, not once, but twice, and now they're getting a fine.
Yeah.
This is at the back of the houses
The back,
where the
where the
fences
easements
don't
are.
meet.
Yeah.
So, but the point being is when you start getting these fences that are not lining up, like what you're asking for somebody to not maintain in there.
So
Yeah.
can we control that they,
So,
Line
yes,
them up
the
together?
answer is.
So I think
yes.
we're almost sort of kind of talking about the same thing.
well, I was
but not really.
talking visually on the side,
Yes.
but
Right.
I think I was talking like if you're driving down the road and this fence comes to here and this fence is here and maybe it doesn't, maybe it would look fine. But it seems to me you'd want that nice even line through the whole
Yeah.
side.
So
But-
you can force that. I don't necessarily recommend you force that upon people. I don't see somebody coming out 5 feet, and maybe they do, but at the end of the day, I don't know that it affects more as the closer you get to the right of way is where the visualization of the aesthetic gets more, puts more in effect. But you're only gonna limit it
24.
to 13 feet. So,
Excuse me.
So, I mean, it's one of the things that once you get into, when we start changing the code to get very, very specific to micromanagement, we start getting back into variance conditions, right? That's the issue, is once you get into that, it's not to say people are gonna say, well, I want more, and we can say, well, council, this is how variances went, and this went to 13 foot. If you say you have to be along the same line, I could see, if somebody says, well, I don't want it that far off, I only want it
Same person.
Right.
10 feet out, right? Because I don't need it. So if you force it, you're definitely gonna force people in a condition of variance. I don't think aesthetically it makes too much of a difference.
Okay.
2 weeks ago.
So that's just, again, if anyone feels strongly, you can force that upon them in the language, but
Well, I think this makes sense. I think it speeds things up. I don't know about the 10, I'd have to visually see the 10 feet.
we can scratch that for the
That whole
purposes.
thing.
Yeah, we can, because I think that's, like Tony said, that gets into more of a larger scale discussion. I put it there merely to see what people thought about that, because that was an easy one to correct within the development plan, but I think, as a whole, I think you do have a few more items on the fence world to discuss.
Well,
But-
I think, I'd like to get into the overall discussion at some point, and I'd like to not do it now, because there's so many other
Just
things.
take
that I
your-
want to
but-
think.
but-
What I had pointed out is the whole thing about 3 and 4 foot high fences. Or what is wrong with the fence coming all the way up to the front of their house? That's, like I said, that's the way they are on Mine Street. My fence comes out to the front. Everybody that has a fence, it comes out to the front of their house. And it's throughout the village. I wouldn't say throughout, but there are other areas where
Yeah.
it comes out to the front.
Those are
And then
pre-existing to the
you
code
can't
change,
have-
right?
And if you want to, the way I describe it is that if you want to live the American dream and have a house with a white picket fence, in Minerva Park, you need a variance for that. Because you're not allowed to put up a 3 foot high fence in the front of your house.
I have thought of that before. It's kind of interesting that you can't have a white picket fence in the front of your house.
And again, some places do
By
allow you
code,
to have a
right?
fence in the front.
If you can get a variance.
If you
yeah,
can get a variance, but by code, we can't. And
by
I'm
code,
not,
you're
I
not
don't
allowed
know
to
why
have
that is.
any. And there's so many fences that are 4 foot decorative fence, that are all over the place, that really have been put up since this code's been put in, and they're all in violation, but they're 4 foot fences, and they're not allowed.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see those examples, and the timeframes. So it's one of the things that southern municipalities do have code, we can provide examples again, that do allow for this small white picket fence, right? Especially in some of the older districts that come out into the front of the house and around it. And you see wrought iron is another one that people use, that come out, and it's 3 or 4 foot high, and it has a nice look with some of the older homes, and it comes all the way to where the sidewalk meets, the roadway, you'll see that as an example.
What would be the reason for not allowing that?
Well, what happens is, and some of this I think from a historical standpoint, again, without reading into it to provide you research, I think what's happened is that as we got into modern subdivision design, right, and you had a very specific look and feel, I think what's happened, of course, people, as you know, it only takes one to spoil it for the rest, right? So,
Yeah.
you had examples in the past where people would put fences and then it started to deteriorate, look crappy, and it's much worse to have that in the front yard than it is in the rear yard, right? And I just think that over time, especially as we had more and more production houses, and then you have subdivisions run by developers and they put it into their covenants and deed restrictions, specifically, it also then got formally adopted at some point into municipal code as well, for probably the same reasons.
Well, I think that where that all came about is that people didn't like seeing 3 foot chain link fence in the front of people's houses.
I think that's absolutely correct.
That's what, and that was
I
real
would agree.
popular
Yeah,
at a period of time.
yeah, there was a time in
Different
certain areas
communities
that was.
said, we ain't having a 3 foot chain link fence in our front yard.
I think that's right, correct.
But
See,
it has-
I always heard that, this is a really dumb answer, because your guys' makes more sense, but I was told it was more of a, police and EMS and all that kind of stuff issue.
I mean, that could be a factor,
Because
but I really
today,
believe, it's my personal.
For
opinion.
EMS to be able to get to the front door, if you have it all completely chain linked,
Mhm.
they either have to jump the fence or whatever.
Cut their thing, or, yeah,
So,
it makes sense. There could be any number of reasons as to why it got
or
out.
20 different reasons combined and it
Yeah,
doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Exactly, it could be health and safety, you're right, it could be aesthetic, could be value, there's a lot of different items there,
So how difficult, if we're doing this, how difficult is it to add in what Tiffany's talking about, where the fences need to back
Yeah,
up to each
like,
other?
To me, that is like the biggest no-no over there
Well,
right now, because it's causing one heck
Two,
of a headache.
so two
First.
things, it's not hard to do what she's saying, what I'm saying though in the front, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that in the front yard, I'd let people, because I don't think aesthetically it's gonna be hard, because I think people are gonna cut their grass in the front yard, right?
Mhm.
Well,
Right.
I think we're running into problems is where you're talking about in the backyard, where they decide to back the fence out of an easement because they don't wanna deal with, guys coming into their yard to get to the electrical box, right? So they, which, when I had a different house and I had a box, I also went around it. But I also put down I did it on a corner, but I also did it in a way so that I put down stuff, I didn't just let grass grow, right? I put down pea grass.
That was, I believe, what was
Yeah.
offered or explained to them that
Yes.
maybe they should consider doing,
Yes,
because
you can spray that, it's much easier.
it's been going on since April.
Yeah,
So every, 2 weeks, basically.
Are they surprised that they need to take care of that? I mean,
Yeah,
do they think,
know.
oh, I just have to take what's inside my
At this
fence?
point, after, I'm gonna be not nice, but I would think after the first warning. and,
Well, yeah.
I mean, maybe they, in all fairness, very much, maybe. I
Yeah.
mean, maybe they weren't aware, and it's an educational type thing, but I was just by there 2 days ago, and
So,
You would think, like, the first time you send Brian over to mow and send them a $250 bill.
That's where we're at
They're gonna learn their lesson.
That's where we're at right now.
Yeah.
So, and again,
And-
I'm always in giving people the benefit of the doubt, giving people an extra chance, giving people all of that, but at this point, I kind of feel, because it's not one person. So again, I believe there's there's a couple people that are involved in it, and none of them are good.
So we would,
To me, I would
get
just
back
do
to
a
your
little
question.
thing.
Yeah.
You can make that change, here, right? We can say rear yard fences, fences along the side and rear yard have to go to the property lines, right? Now, except in the case, of course, in which this is actually a front yard situation. So this will apply, and then you can add language simply here that says, thou shalt take your fence to the side and rear yards. Now, it won't affect the current ones, because those
The
were
ones
built
that are
under an old
already
code.
Well, you wouldn't
Yeah.
want to, because there's no way I would be able to
Yeah.
afford to fence in to, if I was taking it all the way to the property line, an acre.
Yeah, well, and again, that's where we get into the situation of
I
where
would
you
want
want
a variance on
variance.
the other side, yeah.
So that's really the question, do you want to leave it fairly open and just deal with these items, like these annoying items on a enforcement issue? Or do you wanna force them into property line issue, an exact line, and then you get more variances, right? You gotta think about the
To me,
pros and
I would
cons.
rather force that, because I don't know that I'm just gonna say this, knowing what I know now, I wouldn't approve a variance. I personally, if I were on council, wouldn't approve a variance, because it is way more maintenance, and a lot of people just aren't
Fair enough.
clearly doing it.
Their variance would be, I wanna do this so I
I
don't
wanted
have to
to,
mow,
I-
or?
well, they would have a reason, so for example, no, it would be like, hey, I just need this small fence interior to my yard, and again, maybe they have an acre.
Or I have a little puppy. I
Yeah,
have a
and
little
maybe I
puppy, and
have
I just want a 10 by 10.
Yeah, and again, and that's something,
Well, but
council can look
that's okay, I mean, if it's 10 by 10,
Again, it's kind of like what you and I are talking, if you're gonna go, don't go within 1 foot of the property line. So it's like,
Right.
how do you word it on there? So
Yeah.
yeah, do I care if somebody has a 10 by 10? No.
Right.
But do I care if somebody's coming 6 inches and you can't even get a weed eater through this
Yeah.
one and this one? Yes, I
Right.
care.
Yeah.
Because
Right.
that's causing issues.
so if that's the commission's recommendation, we can put that in there saying, side and rear yard, fences in the side and rear yard have to be at the property lines, I mean, obviously, you're gonna come to a point and come to the house, right, except where the connection to the house is, other than that, you're gonna have to go around, and the other exception to that that's already written in there has to do with our easement and our fence, over
Right.
there. So that's another exception. So, yes, you can choose to adopt and recommend that, we can add that here, and we can punch it up for, council to review.
I think it makes sense.
Okay.
Oh, that's just me,
I'm not thinking about stuff like that until I saw it.
yeah.
I mean, until I saw the grass this high.
Yeah.
It says if the-
You don't agree?
No, I think we need to talk about the fences. I mean, they're a mess over there, and I think we need to revisit.
The fences in the new area?
Yeah. And when I say they're a mess, and that they have situations where there's openings, it's not getting taken care of.
Yes.
Our code. I
So we'll
thought our
take care of
code
that.
says- What's that?
We'll take care of that,
Yeah,
if we take care of that.
yeah. It's gonna be a
Well,
recommendation.
what I'm trying to get at is that our code says that you're only allowed to have one type of fence on a property line. In our code.
Yeah, and I think that's.
And then, see, that's something that had never been applied to that, it should have been applied to
So-
all the damn things.
So let's,
Yeah.
let's walk through that real quick. So you're saying that if I'm an owner, and I'll just point out that the council in the past had the opportunity to institute fence regulations. That was an option that they passed on at the time. So they chose not to go that route. So in this regard, I'm gonna have to reread that because I'm not familiar with what you're talking about. The fences, okay, if I have one owner and I put up a specific type of fence, let's call it a white vinyl, and I'm another owner and I wanna put in my wrought iron. Now, based on how those lines work, sometimes they're not exactly on the same, houses aren't on the same line, and sometimes people, again, don't necessarily fence the whole thing. So if I'm the owner in the other house, that one belongs to them, technically it's on their property, okay, it's not on mine. Then I have the right on my property to put the fence I want. We haven't seen we have an owner putting in 2 or 3 different types of fences along the lines. They're putting in the same fences.
Well, what ends up happening, like at my house, my fence goes from the front of the house back like 15 feet. And then it connects to my neighbor's chain link fence.
Yeah.
And it goes down one end. And then at the back, there's a chain link fence. And then on this side, there's no fence, a bunch of trees, and then my fence takes back up. You know,
That's common around in this
and
side.
that's the way we should have done it over there, is that once a fence gets put up, a white vinyl, whatever it is, you can't put another type of fence there.
Because
That
then you
becomes
end up
your
getting
fence.
weeds in between.
That becomes your back, that becomes the back of your fence.
So if they follow, so again, if you
And
push,
so the next door neighbor's got a wooden fence.
Yes.
You know, and then it can go, you can have one wooden fence down that line, that's it.
well.
You don't get two.
Well, okay, I understood what you're saying. We're not talking about the same property owner putting in different types of fences. He's putting in, he or she is putting in a fence to their liking on their side of the property line, it's their fence.
Well,
And it's one fence, all right? And you have, so what you have is different materials, which we haven't restricted in any way, from different owners, doing it on their side of the property line, right? Now, you may or may not like that look, but again, it wasn't adopted, there was the option to adopt one type of fence look, like, you know, in my original neighborhood, it was in my neighborhood, they wrote, you had to use, you know, a specific material, 4 foot high, had to be a picket type fence, right, for neighborly stuff, and therefore everything would match up. It didn't have to be the exact same type of wood, but it had to be a wood product, right? Now,
I mean, isn't it possible over there in the new development for someone to have a white vinyl fence and then put up a wooden fence right beside it?
I haven't seen that, but I just think that it's possible. If they,
That's what I'm talking about.
No,
That's
it's
unusual.
there.
What you were mentioning though, my fence, we fenced in from the back of the house and around. There's a 6-foot fence behind our fence, but it's rickety and it hasn't been maintained and would not hold my dogs. You know, I've got a
Right.
85-pound dog. And I said, there's no way. He, you know,
So what did you guys do, put a fence along?
yeah, we just put a fence right in front of it, but, and, I mean, there's literally no room for anything to grow in there.
But you've got like 2 different fences, I mean.
Yeah, so, and that's,
I mean, I see why you did it, but to me, that's something that,
yeah, I mean, you could, I could just push it.
well, I
Push it over, you know, it's just,
Well, two, I think, don't we have it now that all sides of the fence have to be the same? All sides of the fence in the yard have to be the same.
You have to, yeah,
Seems
the
like
nice
we-
side has to face the outward part, right?
Say that again?
You have to face the nice side out.
No. I mean, if you start with the chain link here, you have to have a chain link. You can't have chain link wood.
So you have like
Vinyl.
iron and then the white, or whatever.
Let's-
I don't believe that there's a rule that says you
no,
can't.
don't
no.
believe
and
there
I
is.
thought we did that.
We've had cases where, like, somebody's had a white vinyl fence
Mhm.
and then, right up, you know, their neighbor has a chain link fence and the neighbor wants to replace just this panel and put in the white vinyl to match, but they still have the chain link around here,
Mhm.
around the other, you know. I think maybe even Pam had that situation happen in her yard, where she was just like doing one side of her yard to match her neighbors.
Yeah,
Instead of putting in chain link, which she didn't want.
but the neighbors would have, I'm saying about around one house. I thought
Yeah,
we
yeah, so-
decided, or maybe it was
so
one
like-
line that they had to all be the same, but you couldn't have a lot of different fence types.
See, to me, I would get whatever my neighbor has, so I'll have to do the 2 sides.
Right.
Because I'm the cheap person, I'm thinking to
Yeah,
myself,
I
really?
was hoping to be
Why
able to do
wouldn't
that
you?
too, you know, to do the 2 sides. but-
Uh-huh,
I mean, because
that's me,
that
that's,
was an extra $1,000.
That's what I'm saying.
Like, I didn't want to spend it, but I also don't want my
The
dog
dog
to
to
go,
go.
Disappearing.
you know, yeah, then I'll get hit.
And
on
then you
once
gotta deal with
in a
your
while.
kids, so yeah.
That's it, the whole
You
fence,
know?
the whole fence,
Or you're gonna
we could spend hours talking
Yes, you
about it.
can.
You're
There's
gonna
many
be
things
in
to house
CCA
though.
Facebook change when your dogs get out.
Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so here's the easy part about the variance, once you guys figure out what you're doing, there will be one more meeting, well, you guys have one more meeting before it goes for council.
Correct. Actually, may have 3 by the time it goes to that.
It's on here for August 24th.
It's on,
Is it?
It was this one, well, one was advertised for the 24th of July, so it will be on there for the 24th of August, it just makes it.
okay.
There was a page that makes that up, but the one that hit the 28th must not be.
Yeah, that would have made it
It
24.
wouldn't have been the
30 days.
24th,
So
so,
they got 2 for the one, they got 1 more meeting and 2 for the other one.
yeah.
So they got time.
So if we just think about just this little paragraph here, what do you think about the 13 feet? Is that, I mean, that's what we've done in all of the other variances that have come before us over
Yeah.
in the subdivision.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
do we have any reason not to continue that?
I think that makes sense. My only thing was, the even
Make sure they're
transition
lined
from one
up.
to another, but,
I agree with that.
but, you know, if they don't wanna, if they, maybe they don't wanna come out 13 feet, so then you're gonna be the opposite. So, I think
Yeah.
that sounds good. Standard? Is there any reason, any
Tell
place
them
you
that-
wouldn't wanna do
just
it?
Say that if you.
have to do this?
13 feet or no. 13
mean,
feet or-
I suppose we could.
Because if,
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
if we
Well-
like this language here, we can, it solves this, because both of the variances fall within that number. And I think
Oh.
Jason probably did that intentionally.
Uh-huh.
Well, and that's what we did with the last one.
Yeah, so, I mean, we set the precedent, so we probably told them this is what you can expect, you know, to get passed.
So are you thinking if we do this, it'll cover,
If we do this, then we can approve these based on this language.
Mhm.
And then we can just, all three of them are off council.
Yeah.
So we don't have to
assuming
worry about-
council accepts?
Yeah, and the
Yeah.
variance will go, so the thing is that if they choose to hold up the code for more discussion, or if they wanna make changes, they don't like what you've written, you still have the variances for them to review, they have your recommendation, one way or the other, and you've covered the bases. It becomes a moot point with the variances if council decides they're gonna move forward and approve
Okay.
the language.
Yeah.
I think it sounds good.
Okay, then,
The only other question then is if you wanna add the language specific here for side and rear yard fences go to property line, except in these cases as listed here. So there'll be one other small blurb.
And then we'd have both of it, both done.
You'd cover them both, right, at least in the, here, and then you can have the larger discussion for fence code as a whole, right, at a later date.
Okay, what was that, what was that?
So it would just be side and rear yard fences must be at the property line. You know, obviously except where they're attached to the house and except in these couple of cases here as listed. I mean, I'll reword it so that it, you know, doesn't, it's basically these conditions here where it's against our fence or, you know, corner lots are exempted from that particular thing because it deals specifically with side and rear yard fences. You just have to make a motion to accept as proposed.
I'll make a motion to accept as proposed.
I'll second that. All those in favor? Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. So then, the one that's proposed, the variance V-02-2020 is proposing that it extends 13 feet over the building line, 12 feet from the sidewalk. And then variance 03 is 12 feet. So they both fall within the, within the.
Right off
Yeah,
the
I know,
bat.
we just talked about that, right?
Yeah.
They're gonna be 1 foot apart.
Why
Well, I
don't
mean,
they
they're
want
not-
13?
They're on separate streets, so it's not like they're gonna be backing out to each other or anything. So we're still not we're still not opposed to just approving these as written. Correct?
I
Since
think
they
if
fall
that's
under what we
okay to
just
do.
recommended to send to council.
Is there, so maybe this isn't appropriate, but if we go back, is there any corner lot that we wouldn't want the fence to go? I mean, we've already approved it, is it too late? Or we've already
No, what
motioned?
were you thinking, sorry?
Well, I don't know. Is there any spot, like, okay, this one's on Farview. So say it's right at the entrance of that neighborhood. Do you not want to see a fence there that goes further out? Does it matter?
I think the way they're designed aesthetically, this commission and the council has found that anything up to 13 foot is acceptable. You have several examples out there now that you can see.
Mhm.
I don't think it matters. And you cannot, you get into difficulties when you start picking and choosing where something can go,
Okay.
right? So that's why we try to be as open as possible in code, because if you start saying, it's all good except for Jimmy here, and his, well, you're clearly discriminating against Jimmy at
Yeah.
some point, that gets you into trouble. So,
Okay. I think if that's okay for us to do, that makes sense.
All right, so I will make a motion for variance request V-02-2020 and V-03-2020 both, we, I guess,
Approved is.
approve to, or send to council our recommendation that they approve both variance requests.
As submitted.
That's submitted. Yeah. So, can I get a second? Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? There we have it. Okay. Moving on to pool ordinances. I think we were on the same page about our goals here.
Did that stuff get sent out, or was that in the package, was emailed out?
Yes, yeah, so you, there should be, it's printed in there, the first page is kind of, yeah, there we go. But you also have it in a Word document. And I think a lot of this, I pulled straight from Columbus, because, yeah.
So, are we just doing temporary, or are we doing everything?
No, everything, but it includes the temporary ones, and I think maybe that wasn't quite so clear before. So like, and even under the definition, you know, like spas and that sort of thing, I don't know that that was necessarily clear in our code before, but I added it in there because it seemed like everybody else had the same wording.
Are we gonna, I mean, is this, well, what I was getting at is, was I able to see this sooner? Should I
Oh,
put
yeah,
this?
so I sent this out right after, like the day after our last meeting. And then I sent it out again 2 days ago, maybe, I think? Because I think Lisa couldn't find, or maybe it was.
Yeah, I
yesterday.
think I couldn't, I found it and then I couldn't
so
find it.
I sent it again.
And I gotta say, this is, the first time I read it was too much for my head. It's a lot for my head.
It's a lot.
Seriously, I have to be honest.
Glad you said that. Listen, I mean,
Okay, so it's not just me.
No, the last 2 weeks has been like this. I open up emails and they look like this, and
Yeah.
I'm just like, I think I did one.
Well, and I think maybe if I had a pool or if I had experienced, maybe it would make more sense to me. But
I think part of it is I look at this and I'm just like, okay, so here's, in English, here's what I want. I believe that if it has more than 3 feet of water, that's, you know, or 2 feet of water, that's where you start having issues. I believe if it's 4 feet, that's where if the pool itself is the barrier, whether or not you remove the stairs, whether or not you barricade the stairs, or you have a fence around it. I mean, to me, safety is the #1 thing. So
Right.
we did have a pool. The only thing that I will say about removing stairs, and this is from personal experience, we had a large pool. We had a lap pool. You could swim. You walked up the stairs, there was a huge deck, and it was 4 foot that went down to 8 foot. There were grandkids that were there, there was my grandparents' house, and I will tell you, the stairs lifted up, and you hooked it up. They weren't that heavy, but they were heavy. They were wooden stairs, so you lifted them up. And that was the rule at our house. Now, it was inside a fence too, to be fair, it was inside a fence, but we were the oldest grandkids. So when we left it down, we got our rear ends reamed because we had 3-year-olds, 2-year-olds running around the house. So, but you forget to do it. So my point is if we don't require a fence and the only thing that you are requiring is that they put up the stairs or remove the stairs, people forget. Nobody's driving past every single house that has a pool that is supposed to remove the stairs to see if they're doing it.
right.
The moral of the story is, you know, is it our job to protect every single resident and every single child in this neighborhood? Not every parent watches their kids 24 hours a day, some are better than others, and some just get preoccupied. Kids get out the back door. So my point to you guys is when you decide, when you guys think about which way you want to do it, are you gonna lose sleep at night over the pools that somebody else didn't take their stairs down? So there's a reason for fencing. Am I an advocate for one or the other? No, but understand that if there's a will, there's also a way. I mean, if the kid really wants in the pool, the kid's gonna get in the pool. So I just think you kind of have to look at it both ways. Like, all of this other stuff, fencing and gate and alarm requirements and this and that, you know, if it's a big lap pool or something like that, but when we start, again, you know, what are we deciding between? If we're deciding between these, the round pools that are a couple $100 at Walmart, that 4 feet, nobody's installing an alarm. You know, some people do put alarms inside, and then you have the requirement between, you know, is there an alarm on the pool? Is there an alarm inside their house? Because a lot of people do have, like, if the back door gets opened, and there's like a buzzer that goes off inside their house when they have pools. So there's different things like that. So it's like, you can't mandate if somebody's battery's dead on their alarm inside that. So you just kind of have to, like, I get all of these, I do. I think it's, I mean, how,
My whole thing with fencing is to prevent little kids
right,
that would accidentally or whatever fall into a pool. You know, this whole issue about once a kid gets to a certain height, the fence,
it's gonna stop them.
nothing's gonna stop them. And nothing's gonna stop an unattended kid who's bound and determined to get in that pool. You know, and that's why I think it's, you know, I understand why we're, you know, it's important to have fences around pools, but the whole thing with there being a risk of a kid accidentally falling into a 3-foot pool, I just don't see that.
I'm more,
Or at least put it this way, the fence isn't gonna stop a kid that's able to, you know,
Right.
get into
you
that.
probably have more likeliness of a kid drowning in one of the lakes, and we now have 5, than you do of the 2-foot, you know, so I'm not in disagreement. I mean, if you don't think that I lose sleep over that at night, and that was just me in general, not just because I'm sitting in this chair now, I mean, every time, when we built our house, my number one thing was I would not buy a house that backed to a detention pond, retention pond, whatever. That was my number one thing when we built our house in New Albany. We had the option, we were one of the first houses, and I was like, absolutely not. I have 2 little kids, not happening. So, I mean, it's happened actually twice right across the street. I don't know if you guys know that, in the last year.
I don't even think about that. I have
And
not thought about
I
that.
know, but yeah, Google it. Mallard's Landing, it's twice in the last year.
At a pool or a lake?
Right across, oh yeah, right.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Directly across Cleveland
Stick
Avenue.
around and die.
Mhm.
Wow.
In a lake?
Yeah,
Well,
they've
it's
got
a
a
retention
pond. Yeah, it's just a little pond with fountain.
Huh.
Yep.
That's a good point. Well, if we're gonna put up, we want to put fences around all over.
Well, this one's probably not deep enough. We should just not dredge it.
I know. Now,
Who would wanna get in it?
Now here's what it's doing.
Then you'd sink in the mud.
Yeah, quicksand, yeah.
Donna, I appreciate you putting this all together here.
So
Yeah,
you just
it's-
wanna take
yeah.
this for the next meeting, or?
Yeah, I'll take a look.
I'd like that,
Yeah,
yeah.
so I thought I remember you saying like,
Well, Columbus was the one that has the 4-foot, you know. once you
yeah,
get
and I know we
4
were
foot.
talking about maybe changing that to 3 feet, but I just
I
pulled
would
in.
like to, but I'm sensing a lot of pushback by dropping it down to 3 feet. But like I said, I really don't think a 3-foot high pool, a kid is gonna accidentally fall into. I mean,
Right, and yeah, I mean, to me, that's where you guys have to determine between the 2 feet, the 3 feet, the 4 feet, all that kind of stuff. Removing the stairs, is that enough? Does it need to be? I mean, I feel like the things that you're deciding between is 2, 3 feet, 3, 4, whether or not you have to have a fence around every single one of them, whether removing the stairs is sufficient, that type of thing. And for the record, it was July 26, 2020.
Whoa.
Well,
And then the other one was last year.
I started looking up drowning statistics and
What-
kids and, you know, they're not, I mean, they do drown in pools, but
They do.
sure, they drown in a, you know, there's a lot
Oh,
more
and-
drowning taking place in.
And just so
all
you
other-
know, it is actually in the complex pond. So it was, again, it was not a pool. It was in the lake.
What
It was in a little
age?
pond.
Or does it say the
4.
ages?
Both of them. I believe the other one was 4 or 7. And the problem is, because this is such a recent story, I can't find the one from 2019. But I actually remember that one. It was awful.
Well, so I guess I wonder, Tony, you're saying you think 3 feet, but why not 4?
Well,
Why is 3 your preference?
3 is my preference because most people buy the cheaper 3-foot high pools. You know, I mean, that's what I mean, in order, for a resident, it's gonna have to go bump up to the 4-foot pool, which may be too deep for the kids he wants to have in it.
Well, they can have a 3-foot pool, but a 4-foot fence.
I'm trying to talk about getting rid of the requirement for the, because in Columbus's code, once your pool's 4 foot high, you don't need a fence.
Okay.
You just have to remove the
You
steps.
just have to remove the ladder.
Or the
Get
ladder,
into it.
yeah.
Okay, so let me make sure. You're saying bump the pool up to 4 feet, that they have to have a 4-foot.
The way
Or
Columbus
they
is,
have
it
to
has
have a
to be
3
4
foot.
foot, and then you don't have to have a fence.
Okay,
So any pool between 2 foot and 4 foot has to have a fence.
okay.
And the majority of the pools that I see out there are like 36 inches.
These are the hard wall size, right?
Well, they're just not hard wall, they're those inflatable, they're called inflatable, where the top thing inflates and you fill it up with water and
Okay.
it's a soft side. And that's the most common one I see out there. I mean, if you Google pools and, they come at, there's like 24, 30, 36, and 48. It's like the typical sizes.
I owned a 2-footer, a big one, but it was only 2 feet.
2 feet, yeah.
Yeah.
But see, that's the
Soft
thing
wall.
about it, it's like the 2 foot according to code doesn't need any fence.
Well,
You know?
I had a fence around my whole yard at that point, so. it's,
Well,
you know.
and that's another thing, is that none of these would matter for people whose fence or backyards are already fenced in.
Correct.
Because they already have it. It's just for those people that, and there's, people that have been doing it for years.
So
in their
we're,
backyard.
the fence we'd be talking about would be around the pool, not necessarily around the yard.
Well,
They would
again,
have to
it
have the
depends.
pool.
But it depends, most people's are in their fenced pool, or in their fenced backyard. I think you're gonna find very few that are gonna be, not already have a fenced-in backyard of that.
Well, if you have a fence in backyard, you don't need to have.
Doesn't
it.
No, that's what I'm saying, that one surprised me, because I don't know many people that don't already have a fenced backyard that,
But if you don't have a fenced backyard, you could put the fence
Just like a
around the
fence around it.
pool?
Yeah,
That sounds
there's-
weird to
It
me.
it looks,
It is.
That's the other
It is.
side.
it
That's
looks
not-
strange, but it
Go
meets
look, go
code.
look at
People
what
do
they're
do
doing
it.
on
Is it temporary?
Yes,
Dry roads.
yeah. They
On
just set it up
where?
around the pool.
oh no, it's not gonna look good,
No.
you are correct.
Yeah, I don't like that.
It looks like it's used for, riot control type stuff.
Right.
It's for
Orange
cattle
fence?
control, right?
Snow fence?
Well, no, I mean, it's
There's
just,
no-
they
they
got
got
lots of
green-
I'm just
sections,
kidding.
yeah, you can just put them down.
So, but yeah, I mean, that's exactly what you're battling. You're gonna have something that could potentially be not as attractive, appealing, whatever, but are you doing it for attractive, appealing, or are you doing it for safety?
Yeah.
So that's the problem, because you can't force somebody to go spend $5,000 to put a $5,000 fence around a $200 pool.
If they want a pool.
If they
You
want.
could.
And again, you're right, I'm not here to,
Hmm.
argue that point, but, it boils back down to safety, and just, the other kid was 8.
And did you say to go look at something?
Yeah, there's one over there,
Briar
Briar
Rose.
Rose.
Briar Rose,
There's a small swimming pool with a,
with a green fence around it.
right. And again, here's the
Like
next,
the orange fence, I think, isn't it?
I don't know. The next part to that would be, again, if you're making somebody put a fence up just to put a fence up that's not even really secure, what's the point of having the fence up if
Yeah.
it's not secure?
Yeah.
But
Well,
are we doing it just to please the code? Because then you go back to the next part, why are we doing it to please the code if it's ugly? Or we need to do things, are we
well,
doing
and
it
also,
for?
you get into the whole gate issue, the way our code reads, that you're supposed to have a gate that's locked, that you can lock.
Mhm.
I mean, that, and, trying to come up with an inexpensive plastic fence and then build a gate, I mean, it just.
If you have a gate,
You have to have it.
you don't, on the temporary
Well,
one.
that's what the code reads.
Line it up, I know, and I would say that our code isn't, obviously, it's 1960, what I've seen in a couple spots here, so I was just looking up some of the standard building codes and where that's gonna prevail, as to what's,
Okay, so we need to decide how high a fence, do we want a fence, is the fence around the whole yard or just around the pool?
Yeah, you got all.
What the
kinds
fence
things
is
to think
made
about.
of?
And I would say, and in my opinion, I would drive around and look and see what some of the other people have.
Yeah,
What are you okay with, what are you not okay with, and, because, the easiest way that I would say it, everything that she sent is amazing. There's nothing wrong with anything. It's how much do you feel it's your job to protect every single kid and resident in the village of Minerva Park and have 47 different requirements
yeah.
or 3.
I'd like to think it's not our responsibility, but
So-
maybe it is. I mean, you'd think the parents would take care of that, but,
And how, you can't legislate away people not watching their kids.
Right.
Well, I mean, not to throw this in, but you had those kids that were climbing over here today on the spillway and everything. If one of them falls and busts their head open, but again, there's only so, I knew, he texted me and told me what was going on, but I walked past there 5 times and said something to 5 different kids. At
Right.
some point, I can't stand over there 24/7, the officers can. At some point, you're right, it's the parents, it's somebody's responsibility, but now, of course, somebody says maybe we should have a fence around it.
Well, I made the comment, because right before I came to the meeting, I commented about, what's wrong with kids climbing trees?
Right,
And
yeah.
just, what's the difference between a kid climbing a tree or climbing around the
Right.
dam?
And it boils back down to whose responsibility is it? If a kid falls and busts their head open in the spillway,
But police don't, again, I just leave it up to your insurance guy what he says, right?
Well, exactly.
Post it, I think probably posting no climbing allowed is probably sufficient to cover your butt, right?
Right, which we
So-
don't currently have, so maybe that's gonna be the next sign. I've always hated the signs in the village. I feel like there's a sign to announce the next sign.
There's a
Is
song
that the
about
way I
that.
feel in here?
We should do that. There's a sign coming up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or 30,
Yeah,
or 30.
yeah,
So, no, but
it'd
again,
be fun.
it's- but I think kids climbing on the spill, I saw kids playing in the creek the other day.
Yeah.
Kids playing in the creek, that's great, but of course, my mind looks at it going, there's not a parent anywhere near here, what if one of these kids falls and hits their head on the corner? We all used to do it, I'm not saying we didn't.
That's
Yeah.
what I loved when I was a kid
Well,
in Minerva
correct.
Park, is coming and playing in the
Like,
water.
But our
I
parents
know, I
didn't
can
sue,
follow the creek
so-
west.
Public waterways,
Covered in
public
mud.
waterways are different than.
Oh,
than
again, I get it. I just-
Yeah,
It's a mother thing to me,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
if one of those kids is by themselves and they fall and hit their head, there's no parent anywhere near
how big were
around.
these kids?
They were little,
Oh, okay, that's.
They were little.
Yeah.
I would have never let my kid out of the backyard like that, so.
Yeah.
We lived in New Albany and my kids were, I guarantee you Taylor's probably, those kids were probably not over 6.
Gotcha.
Now,
Wow.
granted, their parents,
That's a
they're
little-
probably one of those 3 or 4 houses right there, but no way.
Still.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
makes sense.
There should at least be a, I agree, that's a little young. I would
Now-
thought they were 8 to 12.
I'm not saying that the 12-year-old wasn't 100 yards up that I didn't see, but the 12-year-old was not with them.
No, Tiller was not much.
Maybe they were.
Got it.
But it's hard to know, it's the same thing, maybe the older kids were right around the corner.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll table the pool talk.
Well, and I think you're at the end of the season right now, anybody that's
Yeah,
gonna
so
throw
we've
up
got
a pool,
time to-
so.
We can move on to driveway aprons.
So, more food for thought, along with pools. Here's just something fairly simplified that Westerville has already put the work into that I think can be easily utilized and adopted from an exhibit and then some standards. So just feel free to look at that. Obviously, no decision needs to be this evening, but if people want to talk about that, if you want to see it move into more of a formal textual phase, we can do that.
I'm kind of hoping to see this get combined with the sidewalks.
Yeah, you can put it in the same section, if that's essentially what you'd like to do, sidewalks and aprons.
It's just reminding me, I gotta start looking at the sidewalk, because that's now in the council.
Yeah, it's on here a lot. All right. Easy enough.
I didn't make it to the safety committee meeting, but did they talk about basketball rules?
Briefly, but again, we don't take it over till the end of October. We're expecting around the end of October.
So
So-
that, they started that,
What?
talking about what rules?
They mentioned it. I don't want to say that, no. No, it was a brief topic. I think it's something that, I'm not gonna go in crazy detail, but, the basketball complaints are constant. I'm not going to say why. I feel like, here's what I'm
Well,
gonna
it's a lot
say.
of people, we can say.
It is a lot of people, but
over there.
But I don't know if the reason is because of COVID or if the reason is because it's a lot of people. You're not gonna stop a lot of people. So I think it's fair game to be cautious due to COVID, but I'm not really, I don't know that I'm getting the complaints because of COVID. I feel like I'm getting the complaints because it's a lot of people.
They just don't like seeing people use it.
I'm not, I don't want to put words into people's mouth, and I'm not talking about one specific person. I mean, I'm getting multiple,
No.
continually.
And again, is it mostly our residential kids using it, parents, things like that?
Nah, it's a
thing is,
mixture.
The problem, I think, is that there's people coming from Strawberry Farms.
Oh, no, they're coming from
outside.
over there too.
Well, they're coming from
Yeah.
other, I know they're coming,
Yeah.
I mean, they're coming from all kinds of places.
Right, because a lot of the kids in the neighborhood are inviting all of their friends, because I saw it on
Oh,
Snapchat.
well,
That's what the thing is that they're bright,
Yes.
bright, and it's what it is, I think, you know, and unfortunately for you, these people that keep complaining have to be made aware, reminded, that they don't have a golf course in front of their house anymore. They've got a park, and that's, I'm sorry, I mean, and Lisa, you had to, I mean, I was, that it was any big deal or whatever, but you used to have a nice quiet golf course behind you.
I
and
know.
now you don't, you know, and that's just,
Yeah.
you know, progress or whatever you want to call it.
So, I mean, as far as whether or not this body is going, you know, I don't know, I'm not gonna say that I believe safety is actually the complete appropriate place for it. I don't know where the appropriate place is, to actually start the conversation on rules and things. This is more about the improvements, but, you know,
Well,
as far as that goes,
I
I
guess
mean,
that kind of goes hand in hand with, I mean, how much more do you, well,
I just think, you know, I know having rules is one thing. I know posting rules, just like I just talked about signs, it's a CYA type thing. It's not really a, you know, I'm just gonna go with, my kid's not gonna read it. You can
well, I'm
post as
thinking
many
about
rules
how
as
much
you
more
want.
stuff we're gonna put there, I guess, because
So-
we're talking about, you know, improvements.
Well, let's
There-
talk about that.
Yeah.
There was one rule through COVID, or through part of COVID, that you weren't supposed to even play there, and they didn't pay attention to it.
Right.
So
we
you're
took-
not gonna read a whole list of rules
Right.
saying do this or
I
don't
think
do
part
that.
of it
The rules
is-
are for enforcement purposes.
Right, I think the biggest thing, you know, no loud
Which-
music, you know, no vulgar language. I mean, I think.
Close it dark, that kind of
It
thing.
closes it dark. I mean, to me, I think the rules are gonna be short, sweet, and about 5 of them. I think I just hit 3 of them, and I don't know that there's any other ones that, like, for example, somebody said tonight that there was a motorcycle out there and they were driving on the sidewalk. Texting me that information is probably not the best option.
You need to call,
Police.
probably have as part of the sign says, call the police
I
dispatch.
do,
Yeah.
so that's my
No, but
response.
they should be.
They should
They
be,
should
not
be,
me.
yes.
But that's where, and just so everybody, just so you guys are aware, that's why I've tried not to comment so much on Facebook, because people are now tagging me in chief every 5 minutes
Oh,
to get us to comment on certain things. And the MPCA page, I've given, you know, responses here and there, and now I think people are just expecting it. And I don't sit on there 7 days a week. There are days I do, but anyways, we're getting off topic there. But yes, I get messages about the basketball court quite regularly, and we have people that come here quite regularly too.
Do you see it, again, getting back to it, is it mostly, again, our kids' friends, so they're biking?
I believe so. I mean,
Are people driving and parking?
Oh, yeah,
You know,
Okay,
though.
okay.
I
mean-
That gets back to, you know.
I walked by there today, I didn't know any of them, but there are 250 new houses.
Yeah, no,
So
no,
you
I
don't
understand.
necessarily know who's,
I understand, I'm just
who's
trying,
from
this
here.
gets back to our earlier
and
discussion on.
do they have to be from here?
no,
Is
No.
it,
no.
it's
No,
not
they
not a,
It's
Private-
not, it's kind of quasi, you know, at this stage, it's treated as a public park, because it's gonna become our,
yeah.
it's gonna be one, right? So,
I mean, I think probably it should be, you wanna say that our kids have priority, but you can't really do that, can you? It's a public.
no, there's ways to encourage it, right? You know, but you can't ultimately restrict it without making it go private.
But the easiest thing that I'll remind everybody of is there are just as many residents that don't believe it should be restricted at all.
Right.
And that the people that are asking for it to be restricted are, maybe not doing it with the best intentions.
Yeah.
Or, I don't need to beat around the bush, everybody can figure out exactly what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
There's no reason to say it, and the moral of the story is, there's a basketball court there, it's a public court. COVID is a great excuse, I think, for some people, and a valid excuse because of the situation. However, this is not gonna go on forever, so there's really not a lot of things that, you know, if this is 6 months or a year from now, these complaints are gonna fall on, it's a basketball court, it was approved by council, come to council, scream, holler, throw fits, but at the end of the day, just remember there's over 2,000 residents and there's a lot of kids that do enjoy it. So, I think the problem is we have, it's very upsetting for the residents that live right there, a couple of them. There has been some actual physical altercations there. There has been what I was told was an increase in speed, however, that was going to the basketball court. Unfortunately, that car was actually a resident, that was described to me. So now, I do know that the orange Charger was at the basketball court yesterday because I saw it. That is also posted as one of the ones that was speeding, so, and again, you know, I think everybody's afraid to go over there and talk to him, but if he literally was not going the other direction when I saw him pull out of the basketball court, I would have went up there and told him. I mean, I guess, I told him the other day, throw the trash away. It's not a big deal.
So the ones that don't like it, is it visual, if we put some screening, if we got to it and put some screening up there, is that helping?
Yeah, I think that's the hard part, because, I mean, that's kind of what I sent a message back to, was, you know, are they violating a noise ordinance? Is it because of, is it because of COVID, there's too many people? Is it because, you know, what is the actual issue? And I'm hopeful that it's because of the amount of people, because there are, you know, there should not be that many people over there right now, so I actually asked her, you know, call and have an officer dispatched over there. Now, they're technically not going to disperse due to COVID, but they could at least, you know, say, look.
No, wait, what do you mean? What does that mean?
So it's a health issue, it's not an enforceable, like, if there's 10 people standing in a group, our officers are not gonna go try to bust up the 10 kids that are standing there. They're just not.
Are they gonna say something? They're gonna not do anything?
Without asking the specific officer, it probably would still depend on the situation, if they're really just not doing anything, I mean, there's.
Because,
I saw-
because 10's allowed.
10 is technically allowed, but again, it depends on how you wanna look at it, because kids are at football practice today, there were 90 kids in different groups, all on the same thing, so if you have a group playing down here, and a group playing down here, a group over here waiting, and a group over here waiting, there could be 50 kids there.
Right.
There's no rules that say you can't, you're not supposed to be, you know, 50 kids right here, but the last couple times I've been there were kids standing on the sidelines waiting to play, kids on the court here, and they were not playing with these kids over here on the court, they were using half courts. So, I don't know, without going, I'm not over there, I'm just saying what I have seen. So again, depending on what the order is, but an officer is typically not going to respond to that graduation party that was over there that had 75 people in the backyard. That's not they're not breaking any rules. Now, had it been a noise ordinance or something that they were breaking, the officers would definitely go over there.
So I guess I'm gonna ask again, do you think if we did some screening, some plantings there, would that take, I mean, if we just,
hurt.
if we get on that, does that maybe,
There's two things with the
Ease.
screening. Screening can help, obviously,
And then hurt.
residents look in, but then once you screen it enough to where no one can look in, then you have other shenanigans happening.
yeah, I guess I'm not
So you-
thinking of necessarily a full, like
Yeah.
that kind of
I'm
thing.
thinking like grass, bamboo.
And that gets pretty thick, absolutely. I mean, if the intent is to screen, you can find different plants, obviously, that can screen properly. But again, once you get to a certain level of screening, you may find that other things take place that you didn't anticipate within
Yeah.
those bounds, right? Because now no neighbors can see in.
Yeah.
You've eliminated neighbor complaints and you've encouraged something else to happen, which,
Right.
you know, there are pros and cons and effects, so.
And we don't want people over there hating their house and hating this and that. I mean, I think that there should be a happy medium. But I mean, I'm just gonna be blunt and say this. I'm not thrilled with what's in my backyard, but I can't remove them.
Right,
So I didn't ask for that. I didn't ask for it.
yeah.
I didn't, I've got plenty of neighbors that are in the same boat as I am, so, you know,
I hate to say it and be brutal about it, but it's.
part of life.
It's like, you know, if you don't like it, then you gotta.
Then you move.
So, I mean, it's horrible to say, but I mean, I'm sure, here's what I will tell you. I would take that basketball court in my yard any day compared to what I'm dealing with right now.
But I guess if there's something you can do about it, we can do
Exactly.
about it, then it'd be good to.
Exactly. I mean,
to
I think we
try.
need to do what we can to help
To minimize
the annoyance. Yeah, I do.
I assume the complaints are coming from the old section.
Correct.
Yeah.
I've not had.
Because the new
any
part,
problem.
they're building their house and they see.
They build it knowing it.
Yep.
Yep.
So we could screen the old section and the new section could watch to make sure they're not doing
There,
I
that's
anything.
don't disagree with you,
Untoward.
I think that's a good medium, and I also think, the one thing is you have a lot more land to work with, you know, that was our land in the first place, because there's a greater distance, this was interesting, there's a greater distance between people over there in the old section in comparison to how far it is from the houses right across
Yeah.
the street in the newer section, right?
Right.
So you do have more room to work with, you could choose where you wanna put your boundary up, you know?
Well,
Yeah.
There's
How-
not much else you can do in that section between the golf, or I mean, between the basketball.
No, I
court
agree.
and
Yeah.
like what other than to plant a bunch of stuff.
Bamboo's not a bad thought, actually, it grows fast,
Yeah.
it thickens up, you gotta make
No.
sure you keep it, you gotta make sure you keep the right species.
It'll grow everywhere.
Well, you have to plant it correctly, that's the trick, to keep it from going underneath. You can plant, if you plant bamboo with a certain distance under the ground, I mean, you have to manage it, and you have to get the right species, right, there's different
Yeah.
ones.
Or you,
But they do grow quick and they will be up there, and it is a valid
you could put it in
use.
like a concrete
It
planter or
grows like a
something.
weed.
You'd
Yeah,
have
oh,
to
it's
contain it
bad.
somehow.
But it will definitely work as both, you get it thick enough, it works as a nice noise barrier, and it's definitely a visual barrier, and it gets tall, right?
Yeah.
So you've got something that
But
can
I'm
be
not
8,
sure
9
if
feet
you
tall.
want it tall, because then you're knocking off some of that visual,
But it's,
If
I
the
guess it
visual is
depends
your-
on-
if the visual is your intent to keep
yeah.
on the, we'll call it the old classic side down, then
Yeah.
that's what, just as an example, you choose something, and bamboo grows back in, remember, so if you have a group of arborvitaes as an example, right? You've seen where one dies,
yeah.
then you've got a brown one, and it's a hole eventually, and then you put another one that's, this big. Everything else is this big. Whereas the bamboo, I will say, just to advocate for it for a second, you lose a couple of them, they go right
They
back in.
fill in,
You're
yeah.
not gonna have a problem with,
I mean, it's a base, I mean, if you go down bamboo, you got it
you do.
gone.
You gotta make sure it's controlled properly, so there would be a lot put into the containment system.
Well, Donna said concrete,
Yeah, like
Just
just
do
concrete
planters.
containers, even if it's just
Yeah.
like 3 separate ones, and then
Yeah.
that way there would always be gaps, but they would still,
yeah.
and then you could
control.
go through and just, cut a couple stalks or whatever, people
Yeah.
use that for.
Of course, maybe the issue, I don't know how that is about watering, but then you're gonna have to water.
You don't have to water those different things.
But if it's in planters, they're gonna dry out.
Agreed.
that's impressive.
I would almost say that you put them in the ground with a submerged planter system, that's what you have to do. You just dig it out and put them down in there. Then they'll get water flowed in, they're good survivors, so I don't think you have a problem with them. You just gotta keep them going all over the place, otherwise you'll have to field them.
I've got Pinterest boards, like
So-
all of these ideas, yeah.
So yeah, that one's got a bunch of
It's a
shots.
rabbit hole.
What's that?
Pinterest
So,
design.
does anybody have any interest in, I know I'm the one that's talked about this and I'm gonna get myself in trouble because I can already hear, now I can hear the phone calls and the emails before I get them. So, because I can already tell you what's gonna happen. But more of, and we've talked about it already, so some sort of shelter right there. You have that whole double lot. So it's whether or not you would wanna do some sort of shelter or some sort of like pickleball or something along those lines.
Now, when we talk shelter, so just so we're all talking on the same page.
Okay.
You've obviously got Alta Vista, you got a northern section that's gonna belong to us, and you got the southern section of
Okay,
the court.
so I'm coming from Alder Vista.
Okay,
I'm going this way into the new development.
so on the left side is
Basketball court is
open.
here. I don't do right and left, just
Understood.
humoring. We are, because I'll have to look at my hand to see which way it is.
Understood.
It's not awful, up and down, but right and left, okay, now. Going Alder Vista into the new development, you have the basketball court and then directly over here.
Yes,
So that is my thought of where, and all I mean by this is I'm not talking bathrooms, I'm talking Susie's birthday party, 10 people.
so you would build that outside of the concrete pad for and
Oh, yes.
the room you have is, of course, again, closer to the old section where you've got, basically, as you go over the line, that's our original parkland
Yeah,
area.
no, I'm talking next to the basketball court. There's a whole lot. over there.
And that, again, that's directly to the west.
There you go.
So as you get towards, so again, when we talk about usage, and again, you're gonna have to put, if you put the shelter in there, then you're gonna have to have your line of bamboo as an example, whatever you put,
Uh-huh.
closer to the road, right?
Yes.
To the west.
Yes.
So the visual thing, which is fine. You can do this a number of ways.
I think there's a tree line there that would be
I
to the
think you
west
just need to
of the
build
shelter.
in that tree line.
But I thought we were talking about doing a shelter at the pool and not doing it
I think you're
by
gonna-
the basketball
I
court
don't think that,
because of
I
parking.
don't, I think there's a lack of shelters that having one at both places would be amazing.
Oh, okay.
So again, I'm not saying that we would do one versus the other. Yes, same thing. I feel like we went over there for, 4th of July, the day before, for Becky, myself, the police department, EMS, we invited EMS and just for a little cookout type thing. And we just kind of went all the way in the back corner, but no, there is nowhere to go in the village that you could actually sit in the shade unless we go right here, let alone the fact that we're sprinkling for even a company picnic, or you just to go with somebody and hang out outside.
I
We don't
like
even
the
have it.
spot right at, the amphitheater.
Any of those. I don't care where we're,
Because that down in there is, it's kind of in the trees and you're close to the water. and-
I don't care
At
where it is,
least,
but
I think
feel
at
like-
least a table there, maybe a little shelter
Or
would be
maybe, at
good.
least a picnic table.
Yeah.
Maybe a big common.
So I guess that's where I'm at. I feel like one of the biggest things that's missing, and I'm not saying we're gonna get in the business of renting out the shelter. I mean, to me, first come, first serve, how about it? If Susie's
Right.
birthday party and Tommy's on the same day, hope somebody's an early riser.
Well, if it starts to get so much use that we could only hope that we need to have that problem, to have to
Exactly.
sign up for it. Because I think that's how you do it at parks.
Oh yeah, that's how Westerville, you call Westerville Parks and Rec to set up, to being able to have a birthday party. And I just think it would be amazing to be able to have. Now, I can already tell you what we're gonna hear at the basketball court. That said, if there's a birthday party in this or that, continually, that's gonna also irritate these
It's the
people.
same people, yeah.
These
That's why I go to by the amphitheater, just that it's a lot of trees, it's down
It's quiet.
low, it's quiet, yeah.
I'm not
You
opposed
can
to
make
that.
some noise and not offend anybody.
I think
Right.
the
That's why I
issue
think
with
doing
that,
something over by the basketball court is starting to, it's already busy
Yes.
and people
You're
are
gonna have to
upset
figure out a
about
parking
that.
issue.
And then, I understand there's pros and cons to having it all in the same spot, or do you wanna spread it out, to spread the noise out?
Same thing, I mean, over by the pool, I still think is a great area to do something like that over there.
So if,
I think you need multiple spots.
I do too. I mean, I think that we're lacking, again, if you just wanna go have 5 or 6 people here and 5 or 6 people over here, we don't have anywhere.
But some of these things are simpler than others, right? So
Yeah.
as Tony suggested, you start by throwing down picnic tables, right? You can start by, honestly, you can start with a picnic table. You can put the picnic tables wherever you like, and those, in many ways, can be your kind of trial balloons, right?
Test.
Yes, exactly. You try them out at different places to see what kind of use they get. You can observe how people use them. You can hear when people start complaining about them, But honestly, it's a good way to go. You can put them in multiple places.
Would you
They're not-
recommend putting, and maybe we're getting too into the details here, but if we put it just over in a couple different areas, doing more of like a soft mulchy type area, or would
Yeah.
you want more, because if you did a concrete slab at some point, not in the trial area, but,
I think you've already got, so on the basketball court, you've already got a slab, you can throw a couple tables there, right? I mean, you could, people will use them as they wait, so that's one specific use.
and that could also get people to quit from standing around.
Yeah, that's exactly right, sit down, they'll use it for the drinks, you can put a few tables, it's not a big deal.
but if somebody
Then-
wants to have a picnic,
Then you can.
they're
put-
not gonna go when a
No,
basketball.
No, but
game is being
there are,
played.
no, but there are tables, you try these different uses and see how they work. Then, in the section, as an example, in the section here, I'm gonna learn to throw this up on the screen, so I'll walk around here. This area here, you can throw a couple closer to here to see how they work, right?
Okay, where are we?
So this is where the court is right now, this is the
Okay,
basketball court,
yeah.
and you've got this area here too, right? So, this is where the,
Gotta put it
Can
in.
we
basketball
use the
court.
parkland for picnic tables?
Yeah.
Are you asking me?
The answer is yes, you may. So here, so there's the court, yeah, here's your old section here, this is where the road continues, and then it's kind of marked the ordinance, this is all the lines.
Yeah. So,
So this is court, you could put a couple here, you can put a couple clearly over here, because I think your intent is to eventually utilize
Yes.
this area too. And yes, it's nice flat area, and it was used that way, and then you can throw a couple here, you can throw a couple.
what's
over
the
there.
current, is there anything like that at the actual park? So when mom goes over there to watch the kids swing, where does mom sit?
There's a table.
Yeah, there's a bench or two, right?
Bench and,
Maybe,
I think there's still a
Let's
picnic
see.
table.
I think there's one,
There
picnic
is-
Two benches,
table, 2 benches and a picnic
I think
table.
one picnic table. And a couple of horsies, if she wants to sit on them. For donkeys.
There, yeah, she's right, there's swings,
It
there's a
is
couple
swings.
horses,
Here's a question.
maybe a bench.
Do we have to do everything commercial grade?
My answer is no. Here's where I'm gonna start with that. I think in a trial run, if Home Depot has $100 picnic tables over there right now, you could go get 2 of them and put them somewhere to see what type of usage it gets out of it. The other part to that is, you would see, how long does it last?
You would see
I'll
what?
look it up.
How long does it last? Yeah.
So, I mean,
If
for
they're beat up,
$100, not to
if
be
they're
dumb,
used.
if
Yeah.
20 people use it for 6 months or a year. Now, once we really see this is going great, but we're starting to get splinters, da-da-da-da-da, okay, this isn't gonna work. It was great, but now let's upgrade to something else, because now we know people are really gonna use it, but,
If we're gonna get the line, I would hope we at least paint them.
oh, no, we don't do that, you would.
Yeah.
But you know
But
what I'm talking
if you
about.
have a shelter and you put
Correct.
those, they're gonna last longer than if you have them just out in the air.
I think it's a good idea for you to try it this way. I think you're gonna find what every other municipality's found. Once they get
Eventually,
heavy
yes.
use, they get destroyed really quick, and there's a lot of reasons for that. There's also a guy over on 605, south, well, now it's all closed because they're putting a roundabout right there at Clark State.
Of course they are.
605, which will be great when it's done, but you just have to go around now. However, right south of that intersection, he's on the east side of the road, he's always got these nice picnic tables out, and I think he only charges $100 or $150 for them, he builds them over there. So, so you might wanna, this is a suggestion, instead of Home Depot, you might wanna find something nice, handmade quality.
Is
Because they-
605 like Reynoldsburg Law?
yeah. It's out one more beyond 62, right? So Morse, you take Morse out, you'll hit the 60, you'll hit that first roundabout. There's a second one at Morse and 605. You go south there, where I think it's an Irish pub that's on the corner of one side there.
I know.
You know what I'm talking about? Right south of that intersection that's now closed down, on the left as you're going south, which is the east side, he's got tables out. So
So, okay, so this is gonna be, you guys are gonna find these questions a lot. So if we decided we wanted to go as this body, that we decide, oh, we wanna kinda do like a couple of these little trial things, do we have to go, with that fund already sitting there, do we have to go through council?
So again, to answer your question, the answer is that the administrator, if you get a recommendation, you know, as a discussion, it doesn't have to be an official recommendation, everyone can disagree on it. You, as the administrator,
This is
simply get a
under
PO
$9.
made. Yeah, it has to be under, well, is it $2,000 to
I
$3,000?
think it's 3.
Whatever your limit is, and that's, you can go out, you don't need council approval in that case. You just get your PO, you take it out of whatever fund, and you go buy your park benches, and whatever you want. and your
Is this the money that's coming from them?
Yeah, I think
That's
it's
per
500
each house?
now.
500 house.
And I'm not saying we would, I'm just trying to give you
No.
guys some ideas, so it doesn't have to be a picnic table. So we've just kind of gotten a little bit, so if there's a couple things that you guys really wanna try to get moving without it being something crazy
Expensive, yeah.
expensive, if there's certain things you guys wanna talk about over the next couple weeks, I'm not saying we're gonna go out tomorrow and do that, but that's kind of why I'm asking these questions. What can you
Benches
do
are
to
another
get
one.
some little things
Mhm.
moving?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have 2 benches at the community garden we can still use too, like the ones that are already out.
We're getting also, the Eagle Scout is gonna be doing a picnic table and some benches. So we'll have that over by here too.
Along with the fire pit?
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what they've been working on the last few days.
Okay.
They've been working on those over at.
Yeah, I like the
house.
idea of, I mean, you could probably put 2 picnic tables at the basketball court and then a couple more and, I mean, you would just have to make sure that they were near, I guess, the trash can. I feel like
We've got 2 trash cans over there now.
But if
Oh,
we
yeah.
had extra.
Every picnic table needs a trash.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
So-
so. Yeah.
I think that sounds good.
Yeah.
I like the different places to kind of check and see how they're using them. They're not expensive.
No, not for the trial.
I mean, you could buy 5 for $500 from each house from one house.
If you
That
want
makes
to use
sense.
that, for the amount of money we're talking, it can come anywhere out of your general fund, right? I mean,
Great.
And the other thing, the pond maintenance, I was thinking of parkland funds to buy submerged plants.
Okay.
Things that, that basically you weight them and then the roots grow into the bottom for the ponds over there so that we can start focusing on maintenance and health. That way we don't get into this situation.
There's a situation.
Yeah, and I figured, since there are things that are submerged, we don't, there are
Okay,
tons
so,
of species, but I don't think you have to be that particular because they're not anything that you're gonna see.
okay, so,
Just
my
one of those
question is,
non-invasive
how do we
things.
actually make that happen now? Like, what do we need to do? Again, how much are we talking? Is this something that we can literally do instead of talking about it for the next 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and get it done? Is this something you can plant now? Is it something that has to be done in the spring? As you can see, I would rather get some things moving.
So
Yeah,
aquatic plants,
yeah.
you're gonna have to get a little bit of some advice, and I would assume someplace, if somebody goes to Oakland, as an example, since they've got a widespread variety, they do ponds. Whoever does ponds with people to talk to, right, as part of it, and see what different, along with your own research,
I have somebody I can talk to.
yeah, and then you just need to get a quote,
If, I'm not
Oh, yeah,
trying to
yeah,
take
I mean,
over, but if
you
you'd
have
like me
something
to.
that's,
yeah. Because
Okay.
then you can just get, then you can find out, and you can get pricing while you're dealing with it as well, too.
yeah.
So if you could get that, kind of like how we did a couple of those other things,
Mhm.
if you can get some of that stuff and get that to me, and if we can just go ahead and start doing a couple things,
Okay,
assuming that everybody is on board with doing a couple of these things, and we can kind of do some emails back and forth. I don't know if we need to do something verbal, if we need to do whatever, but I guess my point to you guys is I'm on board to try to get some of these things, especially the small things.
Yeah.
Start small, if it's working, we'll keep doing it, if it's not working, find something else.
Well,
So, but I'm completely on board trying to get some little improvements.
Yeah, it's one of those things you can start, obviously, with
I guess
aquatic plants, you start small.
I would, I've been looking at retention ponds everywhere I go, I look at it.
Yep, I do too.
And I don't see anybody planting anything around
Nope.
the retention pond other than cattails.
Yep, and those grow by themselves, you don't gotta plant those.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
so what I'm trying to understand is what we think we're gonna find.
So,
that-
so the idea is, for those of you who recall the conversations that were preliminary in nature, we didn't do an official plan, but if you recall the landscape architect's discussion on aquatic plants in general, kind of one-on-one discussion, you can get the proper, as you'll find out, and you'll talk to the right people, you'll get the plants that you can put in there that, A, start to dissuade geese, because the geese are part of the problem too. They poop in the water, they make the E. coli, and they cause the algae growth. That's also part of the problem. When you put those in there, you also don't need to be mowing, right, up to the edge, right? You put those, because if you know, as she described it, you've got that mud area between where grass is, because the pond goes up and down, right? What you need to do is put in the aquatic plants that grow into those zones. They grow up. That also keeps the geese from going into the pond. It starts to form that ecosystem that also is a form of prevention, and you don't have to mow it, right? So it's an experiment. You just get a group of these that you recommended, you buy them, you plant them, and they should self-maintain. It'll take a little time, like we discussed, to grow, but once they grow up enough, and you get enough of them, you maintain the pond in a way that you don't have to, and it also adds to water quality. So you start getting away from all those chemicals that people, hey, I got algae, I gotta throw a chemical in there, hey, I got this, I gotta throw a chemical in there.
you should be able to balance it.
Exactly.
I think you should be able to balance it.
I think the
Without
experiment
chemicals.
is valid to a certain extent, right? Because you get into these, ponds are all a little different, right? And there's things that, none of us are pond experts, right? So at some point, you're gonna have to involve somebody that can help you expand it. But I think the experiment's valid on the small to scale, and you can see how they grow too, right? What time periods, how fast will they
I would
grow?
like to start with something that, is geared towards keeping the geese out.
Yes.
Of certain
I agree.
areas. For me, that's something that I'm completely behind, because
Geese, very
I can
problematic.
see how that would work.
Yes,
My problem is understanding what we're gonna put in there to get rid of the muck,
yeah.
the algae.
That all leads to better water cleanliness, but putting stuff on the edges that lead to also dissuade the geese. The geese like nice landing strips into the ponds. You start
Right.
putting them, they grow up, they can't get in there, they don't like that, right?
Right, that's what I would be completely supportive of plantings that are really just looking to keep the geese out.
Yep, and
So-
they'll also clean your pond, which is nice.
So, do we want the residents to have access to the ponds?
Well, that's.
If you plant stuff around the
detention
ponds,
ponds are not really for access except for looking at, right? The detention ponds are not meant, this is, I would say, has a different use, right? Or the
It's not
intention.
meant for fishing.
Yeah, but yeah, the detention ponds aren't meant for that. They're meant to hold water a certain amount of time and to meet water quality requirements and flow requirements, right? They're engineered.
But they're not detention ponds, they're retention ponds,
Sorry, I
right?
use that term interchangeably as well.
See, here's how I
hold-
say it.
They hold
Detention
water.
or retention, whatever it
Yeah,
is.
the ponds here hold water for a certain period of time and they maintain the water.
Right.
Right, okay, and they have a level of water maintenance, okay? But they're not meant for us to fish, wade, swim in, you know, I wouldn't wanna swim in anyone anyways, but, you know, people still trust me, as you improve the water quality, you will have small fish that grow into bigger fish, you'll have turtles, you'll have all kinds of neat things in there, right? And you will have a resident that tosses, that gets in there and is waders and might throw it in, but, you know, as long as you don't say no fishing, that's fine, right?
So we
But,
really can't do that. We had a really good idea from somebody that they wanted to put fish in one of those and have like a little kids fishing tournament type thing.
you could.
Well, you could do it in this one,
You've got different lakes here to play with.
Those things will never, I wouldn't say never, but they need to come a long way before you're gonna have fish in them.
I would
So-
agree.
Without
maybe-
stopping it every year.
maybe
And
take
also
the
not without
bigger
water
lake
quality,
and
right?
do that.
That's part of it too, so.
Let all the other ones go natural or
You can
plant,
get
but the
there.
big lake that's sort of all mowed around, maybe you do something there with something
Good.
like that.
That's gonna be your central.
That's my goal, is to be able to fish in this storm.
That's
Yeah.
all of our goals at this point.
So I think, again, getting back to your thing, I think that's right, just research and get something, like Mary says, you can then try it out, right? See how it goes.
Well, I would be a bit, I mean, I see people fishing in these little retention ponds all the
Uh-huh.
time.
Yeah,
I
they
would say,
try.
buddy, have you
They
ever
try.
done anything in this?
So we didn't get very far on the curbs, did we? Or the, what's it called, aprons?
Yeah, and I think.
Yeah, I think we all looked at that and we thought, let's talk
Eh.
about basketball courts.
Yeah,
I'll be honest, this is like Greek. I mean, I don't know, I mean, I can read it.
So,
and
yeah,
I
all your,
understand the
and
words,
that's
but-
about as simple as it gets, I mean, that's just to ensure, again, like the sidewalks, it ensures that there's a certain standard
Yeah,
that we wanna make sure is maintained for quality, and that, it goes a couple different ways, right? A, that maintains the quality up against our roadway, right, that's one of our primary concerns, you wanna make sure that the apron's designed in a way that it, you know, is safe, but also doesn't impact our road in a negative manner, so that's why the design, you know, these standards are stipulated in that way, especially as you get by into the roadway system. So we want them to build it to spec.
And
I
this
think,
to me is,
I think if Tony likes the wording or whatever, I mean, because it's kind of your,
Yeah, I'm with you.
you know,
So-
if you like it, I mean,
So that's all well and good, you can like it, no one can like it, not like it.
but,
This is designed by civil engineers with purposes, people who have their expertise design and keep the roadway and maintain safe for the long term, right? I want that, to be very clear about that.
yeah, I'm just saying that I wouldn't know enough about
That's right.
this design
Well, I
to
would
say
say,
whether or
yeah.
not this makes sense to me.
I don't want to get into the conversation right now, but I will anyway. You know, when you start talking about the grades of concrete and
Yeah.
stuff, you know, I understand that's what
Yeah.
everybody does, but, you know, in my attempt to try to make this a little bit more user-friendly, those are the kinds of things that, you know, when it comes to the sidewalks and this, that I think is overkill.
Yeah, I'm never gonna tell you as a professional in this business that the civils always do things that are a little stronger, but there's a reason why it's designed that way, because someone in the past has done things half, you know what, and then it's caused it to collapse and we have problems. So we have standards, the standards are there primarily, again, to make sure it's done right and that there's an enforcement of it, right? So if somebody put their apron wrong, discovered later they did it wrong and things are collapsing and they've ruined the road, someone's in trouble, right? So, you know, it's just to make sure that people, and most contractors know this stuff anyways. A contractor that knows how to do.
That's my point here, is
No.
that you're, you know, you're.
That's right, but we don't wanna rely on that, we have to have it specified specifically, right? Because it's just like, hey, what's the difference between first, second, third degree murder? You have these things specified in the law, because there's applications to it, right? You can't just say, well, everyone knows what it is, well, not really, that's why we have different punishment levels and stuff, right? And it's the same, going back to something that's just benign like this, you gotta have your specifications, and there are reasons for it.
I don't know why you'd wanna do it any less either.
Oh, I agree with you, but people do.
So I had a little education with concrete. I kind of thought, well, what's a big deal? I was trying to do something for the shed for the MPCA, and I had no idea. I mean, I talked to a couple quote people. One guy I talked to, he gave me, it was probably half the price. But when Gene McCall said what, I don't know, PSI or whatever, he was like, never mind, I'm not doing it. Now, I don't know why exactly, but I'm guessing that his quote was so much cheaper because it probably was not
Not gonna
the
meet
same
specs.
quality as the other people.
You have
And
to
apparently
go
for a
long and hard to
shed,
Find concrete, that's what I'm trying to, I don't know.
Listen, this is not, concrete's not my specialty fields, other people's fields.
You
maybe
gotta
this is
really
design
try
for.
hard to find crappy concrete, okay?
People do it.
but they have levels
do.
of strength, right? So there must be some
You have to be.
importance to that.
It's about,
all
the
related.
thing that's important is the thickness and the base. The quality of the type of concrete that you're going to use is, in this particular, we're not landing the space shuttle, we're driving cars in and out. And if it does break down, they gotta replace it, you know, it's that simple.
They do.
And you wanna talk
They
about that,
do.
it's like, if you wanna start talking about the quality of the concrete, then maybe we need to start talking about how much salt you put on it, and, you know, because.
Also agree, that's also another thing, I
So
totally
why
agree
don't we
with you.
get it, we don't
Salt-
need to get into that. I
But
mean,
that's the reason
This is what
someone
I say to your.
else, someone else has put these together, someone else has
I
spent
know
the tax
I
dollars.
did.
There are people who are experts who have these things called PEs after their name, and those are the guys I listen to and that the vast majority of municipalities listen to. We don't just say, yeah, throw in concrete 6 inches. You put specs behind it, you put sub-base, you put expansion
How
joints.
are you gonna,
have
you see,
design.
here's the thing that I've worked within this field, and the only way you can check is you have to drill it out, send it out to be tested. It's like, what the heck are you talking about? Is what I'm saying.
So, is you prefer, would
You
you
know about, so we need to do this, so we have all these standards, but we'll
Yeah,
never be able
we
to
put the
decide.
standards in, we put the standards in to protect ourselves and make sure it's very specific to
Here's
the
the thing, Eric,
contract.
what you need to understand, is that, and you're not grasping this, is that you come from, you've been educated, you worked in a bunch of other municipalities, and this is how they all do it. Well, what I'm trying to
reasons for
get, okay, but we don't have to do it that way, Eric. You're
Okay,
in your
good.
own part.
Again,
And
you
that's
can try the
what-
council members, that's wonderful, go right ahead.
I know, Eric, but see what you do is continually say, this is the way everybody else does it.
And there's a reason the reason we say that, just so you're clear, there's a reason we say that. The reason other people have done this is we don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? That's the important thing. Why do you want to reinvent the wheel when other people have gone
We're
through
not,
this?
we're not.
But you will. You will. You'll do things that people have spent 50, 60 years developing this stuff, going through mistakes, getting to the point now where things are standardized, and you're like, just throw it all out the window. What do those idiots know, right?
Okay,
Those guys are
concrete.
PEs, concrete. We'll just make
All
it
right,
concrete.
okay, I am going to make a motion that we
Continue.
recommend to council that they consider Westerville's apron program for our own. Can I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? There we go.
Wonderful. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right. So I think probably,
Hey, let's just end this thing in the bang, things at the bang here.
yeah, let's just.
Why
let's-
is it that the MI punch list is not purview of the planning and zoning? What I would like you to explain to us.
I'd be more than happy to.
Why
You can discuss,
seem to be the
you
only
can
one
discuss
that's allowed to
everything
do-
you want, everything you want. If you want to tell council you think this should be here or that should be there, tell them. The fact of the matter is, it's council, you included, are obviously going to go over anything you think is still problematic with them,
But
okay?
the problem I have, Eric, is I don't know what you are working with them, and why you cannot tell us what's on the punch list.
Yeah, I'll send you an email. Will that make you happy? I'll send you an email.
No, I
That-
sent, okay,
That
so,
was not, that was your,
No.
wasn't it?
so here's what happened. Him and I have talked about it. Well, we've all talked about it, that's been like the ongoing list.
I've been asking what's on the punch list
So-
for an hour.
Jason called me from MI completely out of the blue. The guy from MI that we met with back in whenever we met with him when I was still on council. He called me, he says, I have a $25,000 check sitting here and the deeds for the green space. We're expecting the last house to close October 30th or 31st, whatever. So, you know, we wanted to start getting moving on you guys accepting the green space. The $25,000 was exactly what Brian had explained to us that it was gonna be to help maintain some of the other stuff. That said, in the email, they are going to complete, I'm only telling you this because it's on record, so. they're gonna complete out the mowing for the rest of the year. Regardless of the $25,000, they are gonna finish out mowing the rest of the year. That was in the email he sent me, and I don't know if you saw that, but this $25,000 is basically to get us started for next year, whatever else we encounter this year, maybe plowing, whatever. I was always under the impression that they were gonna basically be done in August, and we were gonna have to use that $25,000 to mow. Does not sound like, so it's, again, a win-win is one way we need to look at it.
Yeah, but
I
they're
told
not
him-
gonna have to mow a lot after the
You're
end of
not gonna have to
October,
after
right?
October, yeah. I mean, October 31st, if we did, it would be once, and we wouldn't do anything crazy. And honestly, we could just contract with them for once, and I'm gonna go with, I'm out, we're not mowing in November, that's crazy. Anyways, so I told him, you know, we've started putting together a list, because of course, you know, he does get emails from several people several times a day in regards to things that need done over there, and that's a fair statement. As well as I've had my own list, which has been an ongoing list that we've all talked about. So the dead bushes, the sidewalk, the mound of dirt, those things are all on that list. He completed his email back to him, because I reached out to him and I said, I told him that I would have it to him Friday. Because we wanted to give them ample, his words were, we would love to come to your August 24th meeting and tell you all of these things are complete. So he asked for us to get them now. This is a list in which, I'm gonna say it my way, he may not agree with this, but this is my list. I've asked everybody to kind of, you saw the email, as well as the emails that he has been getting. This is a compiled list of all of that. Does that mean that we're not gonna go September 5th and say, oh my God, here's this, didn't realize it, or something that's come up? No. This is the list of the crap we've been talking about. The sidewalks, the mound of dirt, what is the deal with that? I'm only using that because that was yours. There's a wobbly board over there. The basketball court was not seated as well as maybe what we had liked. The area that was fixed out here wasn't seated very, you know, they haven't seated that yet, but that's on the list. There's a list of probably 9 to 12 things that's on there already. And I'm honestly expecting most of those to be complete because they're all pretty
Yeah,
basic.
they're easy.
Adding a nail here and other than the concrete. I mean, to me, fixing that concrete,
The railings on the, things will be a discussion point on the golf cart things. but-
Yeah,
But
so-
we'll see what they say.
exactly. So there's a couple little things that I think are, they may not have any interest in fixing, but they're on the list. So they may come,
Has she gotten a list?
I don't know that anybody else
I
is on
haven't.
the
If
list. So,
anybody would,
But I have one in my head.
yeah, exactly, so,
That's why we need to know.
It's
Here's the
extensive,
thing,
yeah.
Here's the thing, if people have things, just send them to the mayor, feel free to copy, you don't have to copy, she'll send it to me anyways.
right.
But wait a couple weeks, they're gonna be at the August 24th meeting, so everybody gets really riled up about the stuff, but it all gets handled at the end, and then people can, if you still see problems, forward them on, and it'll get handled.
But we should send stuff before August 24th.
You send whatever you like, I guarantee, I won't guarantee, but I'm pretty confident that everything you've already sent me has been compiled into it, if it's not already been handled. So there's a number of things that everyone's well aware
There's
of.
like
I'd
pine tree
love to
over
see
there.
a list.
Yeah.
And then I won't
I have this,
duplicate.
You know what, I have it. I'm gonna forward it to, you've seen it.
Yeah. The only thing that was added on was, I think, the mound of dirt that I was talking about.
Yeah.
None of the other.
Nobody responded. Nope. But no, then somebody else responded, I'm not gonna name names, but we had somebody else reach out and they were asking a couple things that we added onto it, which were, again, just simple little things that need done. They're not an issue. I could actually just go over and fix it in 1.2 seconds, seriously. Like, I wouldn't have, it's not something that I would have even thrown on the list. I
So
think
what
it's
about, so one of my issues is around the lakes, they've done these plantings. I did not realize they were gonna do these plantings.
Around the retention.
You know, trees?
Yeah, I'm sorry, retention ponds.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, trees, shrubs, maintenance, mulch beds. I wonder if we shouldn't, this is just my opinion, if we shouldn't have them, we should leave the trees. Some of them are dead, they're full of weeds. Is it
Well,
something we wanna
anything
maintain?
that's-
Do we wanna have them take it out?
Anything that's dead, so if you don't want the tree replaced,
Mm-hmm.
but that's an interesting discussion point. I have a number of trees on the list that I have to walk through and say, you know, hey guys, these trees all need to be replaced, they're street trees, right?
Mm-hmm.
The trees in the pond is an interesting request, if everyone's agreeable to
Well-
it, because I would just have them replace the tree you know, and
So
with
it-
something
I think it's
appropriate.
more, for me, it's more shrub. Like, I can see the, and this is just my vision. It doesn't mean that it has to, obviously, it has to be this way. I could see the trees staying. I feel like where they've put the garden beds in, the mulch, that's gonna be something else that needs to be maintained. Either that or you're gonna let it grow over.
You're
So why
right.
are you gonna keep
Yeah,
the stuff there? You just leave the tree, let it do its thing. But could we, if they're replacing the shrubs, if you've got one of these
Put it
beds. that the-
somewhere else?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
put
can we
it
just
in-
say, okay, we don't want him there, but we'd like him here?
Like
So then
over
we-
at basketball court by the fence.
Exactly, exactly.
That, I will bring that up. That's a
So-
very valid point.
So it
Yeah.
doesn't cost us anything.
No.
I don't know if they put them in or we put them in, but it's also less maintenance for whoever's maintaining.
Agreed.
They're very pretty, but then also if you're gonna let them grow up so the geese can't get in, then they're gonna cover those gardens anyway, potentially.
Potentially, depends what you, again, what you're expecting, so. Yeah, no,
Okay,
I'll bring it up, so,
Eric, maybe I lied.
it's okay, then we just send it around and
Yeah, no.
we do.
I mean, I would send, because I'd like to see whatever, well, if they're really little things, I guess, I don't see them, but, I mean, because there's things that haven't been talked about much is, you know, the drainage, you know, there's areas that are always underwater over there, and, you know, that's a huge, I mean, these are huge.
That is something that we'll go over, and the next time it rains, I'm gonna go over there, and Diane has actually brought it up once or twice. There's a really low spot down, if you walk the walking path, you go down that big hill, you
Yes.
go around like the curve, and then that is always wet right
To
there.
the right.
Yep,
Okay.
And there's a low spot that's wet, but on one side of the bridge, and on the other, I actually was there today, and there was a lot of water coming from the house. I'm guessing they maybe have sprinklers, coming down the blacktop, going down the side of the blacktop,
Yes.
eroding, and then at the bottom, it's a bunch of erosion,
Is that
stone.
like drainage from their houses?
I
Like-
think, I mean, I didn't see, it seemed to me it was probably sprinklers, because it obviously hadn't rained, and it was sort of everywhere, it wasn't like
and
coming
it's
from
gonna
one
end up
drain.
putting little holes down there that you're gonna fall off into, off of the.
Yeah,
Well,
And Eric, I actually did have one more, this is not necessarily to put on a punch list, because this isn't their issue. I'm still in, we have to do something, whether MI is willing to assist, and I'm not even talking about them paying for it, I guess I'm more talking about if they have a truck somewhere, this path, that
Oh,
pathway.
yeah, that was on that's on my discussion.
Okay.
So don't worry,
Yes,
I'll bring
so-
it up and ask them how we wanna,
Yeah,
we'll talk about, I'll bring that in.
That's just
I
one
mean,
of those-
here's the other big one that I haven't brought up yet, is the way it is eroding right below the spillway.
mhm.
If you look at the spillway to the right, to me, the boulders need to be rearranged. Because there's something's going on there that is eroding away to, I mean, I think it happened, well, it has to happen after a really hard rain, a lot of water's going down there, and it's eroding away that hill.
Okay.
To the point where, I mean, it's maybe 10 feet away from the fence.
Okay,
Mhm.
I will, we'll talk about that, and then that one maybe because
And
that
the
gets
path.
back to the dam design and stuff, that may be something that I involve Mike in for his observation and discussion as well, because he's the professional there and he was there during that stuff.
To me, it's just, maybe we have to put some more boulders down there,
Okay.
remove them. That's what I think has happened. It's because, I mean, the spill, a lot of that, sometimes spillways from the old dam,
Yes,
part of it is, so it's in the exact same spot, you know, and it's even a little lower than it was before, and for some reason, it's just wiping that hill out.
okay, very valid, I appreciate those. All right, and then obviously as things come up, just keep sending emails, right? So, no problem.
So we will adjourn at 9:03.
Thanks.
Jim?
Uh,
Aye.
All you vote?
So Meredith, we.
I have one more thing, because I was not listening to you guys, okay, hang on.